yeah. Did you survive? We survived. I survived. I think Sam survived. We'll check here in a minute to see if Sam's still alive. He made it through the Snowmageddon 2024. Brought to you by Snow and Shit here in Knoxville. It's a crazy week. Not a lot got to happen on the civic calendar locally because everybody shut everything down because it snowed in Knoxville, and you know how that goes. So anyway, we're Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Go to the website, almostinagreement.com. Check it out. Finally started doing some interviews. If you checked out last week's episode, an informal chat with Jennifer Owen. That was a great time, great fun. We got a few particular good touches on a few items, and then I had Becky Massey earlier today, yesterday from release dates as far as things go. So if you go back one episode, it's Becky Massey doing some session preview stuff as well as a little bit of election preview because she is on the ballot this year. And I did learn the correct answer to some things that Sam was talking about a couple weeks ago as far as how some of this stuff works. So anyway, podcast provider, like, share, friend, follow, tell your friends about us. Your Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all those places. Help us spread the word. It is an election. We're getting the word. Here we go, people. Hey, buddy.
Hey.
What's up with ya?
Much. Mr. Thing, you said brought to you by Mother Effing Nature.
Motherfucking nature. We gave up on getting paid by YouTube ever, so I don't know why I think about trying.
So missed a good line. I was like,
It's a good, it's been, I will start, like, on the top end of it is that in the history of me living in Knoxville and the snowstorms and stuff we've had, this was specifically unique, not so much in the volume and the how it started. Most of the time when we get storms that have some good volume to them like this one did, it starts with rain and transitions, which makes it so much worse on the travel side.
Right, you get ice underneath it.
Right. And so for the most part with this one being, like, it just started snowing Monday morning, and that was that. Like, it just started snowing and didn't stop. And so I will give kudos to Knox County and the city of Knoxville as well as TDOT doing their thing, getting the roads pretty well. Because, everywhere I've been all over. I've been driving through the whole thing. I haven't stopped. I've been picking people up. I'm a terrible boss. I make people work, which that's not true, but whatever. We like to be open. We want to be open, and everybody's schedule's like, I'm not going to fucking fire you for a no call, no shit. Well, if you don't call me and talk to me about what's going on, I'm going to be upset. But it's like, hey, I'm stuck in my house. I'm not going out. I don't feel safe. This scares me. I respect that. I'm not going to freak out on you. I'm not going to fire you over it. But there is some stuff that did piss me off about the staff side of it. And so I was like, hey, if you're not comfortable driving, but you want to work because you need to make some money and stuff, I don't know how busy we're going to be, but you get paid by the hour. So if we're busy or not busy, you're getting paid the same. Right. I'll come pick you up and take you to work if you want. And so I've been driving all over town to different employees' houses, picking them up, taking them to places, going to shop, picking them up, taking them home.
Go you.
And it's, Max has been doing his fair share of that as well. He actually is out of town this weekend. He had to go to a funeral in Texas, which might be a whole different set of travel messes down there right now. But, also the whole border controversy down there. Have you heard that story?
Not really.
Crazy. Yeah, apparently, there's a big fight over how much the state of Texas is allowed to secure its own border.
I saw they passed a state law.
Right. And so, and it's kind of weird. It's one of those kind of bullshitty headline things. Apparently some people drown trying to cross the Rio Grande into Texas.
I did see that, yeah.
And the Department of Immigration or whatever, the Border Patrol, Federal Border Patrol, was pissed at the state of Texas because they wouldn't let them onto that section of the border to go save these people.
Right.
But all actual accounts say these people were well dead before the federal agents showed up. They weren't going to rescue them. They were just going to collect the bodies and get them out of the river, which, it's not a bad thing to do either. But
I thought so. They responded within 30, 45 minutes, but I don't know when they got the first call, etc.
Right. But they're already dead. That's the moral of the story. As I've heard the stories, they were already well dead by the time anybody showed up to try to save them.
Well, they had floating barriers. I don't know if they were holding on to the floating barriers, holding on to the concertina wire that's been strung across.
Yeah, I don't fucking know. It's crazy. It's all sorts of crazy. I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole. Anyway, we had a lot of snow, and it's been a crazy ass week because of the snow. But I will shout out to the government entities that be, because I think they did a very good job with what we had.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, the major arteries and the secondary corridors are all very easily travelable. The only part that sucks is your street that you live on and your driveway or your parking lot at your apartment complex. That's been the worst with all the staff.
Yeah.
Everybody that I picked up, if they live in an apartment complex, nothing. Yeah. No work done whatsoever. And so it's just packed in snow that is melts and refreezes and melts and refreezes, and then it's like this weird icy mess. Or the one staffer of ours that lives on a mountaintop up in Anderson County or whatever. Yeah, that was a life choice you made, and so I'm not going to be super patient with you getting stuck there all the time. Every time anything happens, you're stuck, and it's like, I don't know. Like some of it, like to me, is like one of the things my neighbors have been doing, because my street, as you know, it goes and does that dip.
Yeah,
there's a couple of hills, and so the people that live on the other side of the hills on Tuesday or Wednesday when they finally got out, they were parking in front of my house. And most of them that did knocked on the door. It's like, hey, is it cool if I stay out here? I live down at the bottom of the hill, and I'm not going to be able to get up the hill in the morning, but I got to go to work tomorrow. I was like, yeah, man, it's cool. It's just so like being a little bit forward thinking, going, okay, I know once I get to this artery up here, I'm fine. And I know this stretch right here is flat and straight, and I'm only going to go 2 miles an hour on it anyway. But that hill is what's going to stop me, so I'm going to make sure I can avoid that hill. And
exactly.
And I would like that's what frustrates me about some of the staff stuff, is that there's no foresight in the, hey, if I just, instead of going down my 5-mile driveway that's just dirt anyway, maybe I'll park at the end of my driveway and hike to the house, or get on my 4-wheeler and take my 4-wheeler from my house to where I park my vehicle down where it's accessible to humanity. But, and again, like to me, that's a life thing, not just a work thing, Yeah.
I've done it in times past, that kind of preemptive.
Yeah.
I was like, I live up on a hill that turns as you're going up the hill.
Yep.
Like, let me go and park down at the bottom of the hill, because I'm going to need to go.
I remember like
tomorrow.
In the late 90s, not the blizzard of 92 or 3 or whatever,
right.
But in the late 90s we had a storm when I was trying to go to your mom's house. And I remember that was when I was in the Blue Demon, the little Nissan Sentra that I used to have. Mm-hmm. And I could not get up that, and it's not a big hill or anything, but it's enough hill that you lose traction pretty quick, and you're just slip sliding right back down.
Yeah,
I remember trying over and over and over again to get up that hill in that little blue Nissan.
My dad let some guy borrow his truck the other day. I guess he happened to be outside, and the guy kept trying to go up the hill. I guess he'd just gotten back from like vacation. I forget where he said he was. So we couldn't make it up the hill. Then I guess my dad, he and I started talking. So I let him borrow his car so he could get his stuff like up to his house.
Yeah,
and apparently paid him with a beer.
Nice.
So my dad gave it to me.
Proper neighborly good stuff. I like that. Because that was my joke. Is like because your dad's got a 4Runner too. I've been kind of annoyed at how good the 4Runner's traction control system is. Because there's been a few spots where I've been like I went to the pet store because we needed to get crickets for the bearded dragon.
Yeah.
Right. Needed to get food for the animals. So I went in the pet store, and there's like 5 cars in the entire parking lot, and it's all icy and snowy and shit like that. It's like, ooh, all right. So like I put the pedal down and turn the wheel real hard, and it just click, 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 click. Nope. It straightens out.
It corrects for you?
It doesn't straighten me out, but it does. The whole traction control kicks in, and so like when I put the pedal down to try to spin it, it takes all the power out so that it won't let the tire spin.
Right.
And if it won't let the tire spin, it won't let me slide.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's
you can turn it off.
I know I can. It's just the principle, I guess, is what it's like. It's like, this is awesome. It's awesome, is what it is. It's amazing. But in the random moments, I'm like, oh, bummer.
I saw a decent bit of people on Tuesday that I thought were being kind of stupid. I'm like, you're driving way too fast for the way these roads are. Like, that road is a sheet of ice.
Yeah.
Like, you can't see the asphalt. I don't know why you're doing like 30.
Yeah, coming down the hill on Morel going into Westland, I got a little squirrely on that downhill a couple times. But, whatever. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think as far as I could tell, as far as I've seen, I've been out in it and stuff like that, Knoxville has handled it fairly well.
This morning wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because it was raining for a good bit, and I'm like...
But it never got that cold. Like, it was weird. Like, I don't know if you watched the temperatures last night. Okay, so this whole thing...
close to freezing.
Right, but not at... Like, it wasn't significantly under. It was, like, right at 33, 32 all night. So the stupid neck thing that I was complaining about pre-show, like, I can't sleep. I haven't slept in, like, 4 days. And so last night I was watching the weather because I couldn't fall asleep, and I was like, it's so weird because, like, it was getting warmer as it got into the evening. So like it was like 29 at 5 p.m. yesterday afternoon, and then it got up to like 34 by midnight, and it was like 34, 35, 34, 33, 34, 35 from the overnight hours. And then as sunrise kicked in, it dropped down to like 29. And then it was like 29, 28, and then overnight tonight it's supposed to drop back down again.
Yeah.
And we'll see. Because I think, they hit the nail on the head on the winter weather alert on Monday, Tuesday, but last night's it was not. They were predicting it to be colder and more freezing rain and more frozenness than it is.
I drove through a little bit of freezing rain.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
it could have been because I was doing 15, 20 going down the road, but I mean, when my wipers finally like wiped off what was on the windshield, like it was semi-solid.
Yeah. One of my guys at the
snow looked really cool
up at the North store said that it was pouring, like pouring rain up there at like 8:00 last night, which was kind of weird. And so I was like, that's good, as long as it doesn't drop to like 12 degrees in the next couple hours,
right.
Which it didn't. Like I said, it stayed in the 30s, in the low 30s all night. So it never got a chance to refreeze like solid.
It gave the snow like a real nice, like shiny sheen.
We got some bamboo back here that we had pulled out of the back fence line or whatever that she had set aside because she was just kind of screwing around like weaving baskets and stuff and messing with it. And so there's a handful of bamboo that still had the bamboo leaves on it that there's like some of the melt that's come off the roof and then refroze, and then melt and refroze has been falling on it. And so like each of the bamboo leaves is like in a cylinder of like solid ice. It's a really cool looking, like just ended up really cool looking.
Yeah.
So it's been great. I had a good time. I didn't get this neck thing. I haven't been sledding, but kids got out and did a little sledding, did a little crazy. I saw a kid maybe die or at least get a concussion on my way home yesterday. I was driving by Lakeshore, and everybody likes the big hill on Lakeshore that comes down to the intersection.
Right.
And so there's a guy on the fence, like on the street, like right on the edge of the street, and you can just hold his phone up, taking a video. These two kids are on one sled coming down the hill, and they're hauling ass. And as they're coming down the hill, they keep kind of veering left. And I'm kind of like doing the math, or like I'm following the line as I'm watching them, and that line goes straight into a tree that somebody had taken a big like construction barrel and put up against the tree.
Right.
Presumably because whatever it is,
somebody else had already hit it
some
first.
people have been hitting that tree,
right.
And they've hit the shit out of that tree. Did that whole like bounced off it, rolled a little bit, and they both sat up. And the dad throws his phone in his pocket, starts running up the hill. I'm assuming the dad or whatever. The guy throws his phone in his pocket, starts running up the hill, and like I could like even as far away it was, my assumption was it was that kid face of, am I hurt? Am I not hurt? I don't know what I'm doing. How do I react to this? Like because my little one did that. John or whatever he calls himself now on the show, when he buffed it, he bit it hard on his bike a couple years ago. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Yeah, I mean, he had a big, it was softball size thing coming out of his forehead where he thunked his melon. And he did that when he fell off and like he hit the ground and he got up, didn't say anything, no sound, no nothing. And he's looking at me and I'm running down the hill after him, trying to get to him. But like I tried really hard to not freak out.
Right.
I was not freaking out.
Because they'll pick that up
right.
too.
And so it's like, yeah, he was literally looking at me like, am I dead? Am I going to die? Am I dead? I'm like, everything's cool. And he's like, it hurts. I was like, yeah, I know it hurts, but you're okay. And I mean, he freaked out a little bit, but not crazy.
Yeah.
And that's that's definitely the look I saw on this kid's face after he got up from hitting that tree. So anyway, one unconfirmed froze to death homeless person.
Really?
Yeah, that's a bummer.
I saw it was an accident, I guess, Monday night. But it was like a small like box truck that ended up like running into a tractor trailer that was off on the side.
Yeah, that's been the scariest, I think, out in it is just, I guess, different places where at different times it's been really bad and people have like slidden off onto the shoulders and stuff like that and got stuck. And I guess Scott and Jesse were talking about earlier, I guess, like when they go into like extreme weather, whatever, for KPD and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I forget what they call it. Yeah, they announced they were doing that.
Right, like they don't call wreckers, they don't call the tow trucks or anything unless it's in the street. If you're off in the ditch or whatever, they put a piece of, I don't know. Scott and Jesse didn't say this part, but this is what I witnessed when I was driving around, is they put some like police tape on like around your vehicle, and that's an identifier for any other emergency personnel that this car has already been
tagged or something.
Yeah, people know, like there's no people inside. It's not, they're only stuck in here. Whatever the incident was a while back. You don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And so seeing a lot of those cars on the side of the street, and obviously at some point it was one of those, slipped on something, got crazy.
Yeah, I know pretty sure they've got studded tires they can put onto the cruisers. But I think they announced for at least like most of Monday and Tuesday that they were only responding to like urgent calls, basically,
right. With injury,
right,
stuff like that. Yeah, and apparently one of KPD's rules, which is like, it makes sense, is when they go into winter weather mode or whatever, it's 2 officers per cruiser. So it's the same number of officers on duty, but half the cars.
Yeah.
So both for putting less cars on the road, but also you have a person with you if something does happen. You have an assist. You're not stuck out in a ditch by yourself.
There was an ambulance that was off on the side of the road. I don't know how the hell they got on to that side of the road.
Well, that was the scariest one I saw. Was there was a semi-truck, full-size semi-truck with trailer, facing the wrong way on 640.
Oh, shit.
And so it got
It's like,
spun
how
around.
did you spin around that
Yeah.
much?
And maybe it didn't. Maybe it got like stuck sideways, and that's when they do bring the wrecker out to get him out of the road. And that was the quickest, easiest way to get him out of the way.
Yeah. Like, just yank it and have fix
Yeah, there was a photo floating around.
Have him figure out how the hell to turn this bitch around.
There apparently a Rural Metro fire truck rolled over.
I think I heard about that.
And it's one of those, like, like that's the crazy thing. Like I don't think about it because we've lived here forever. But my brother-in-law once, many years ago, when he came to visit, maybe not the smartest thing going on in general, having a couple beers. It was the last Brock Lesnar fight in the UFC, and just for something to do, we bought the fight. And me and him and a couple other dudes were watching the fight, having some beers, hanging out, just kind of trying to make a time of it. I'm not super close to my brother-in-law. This was a way to maybe try to get something going. Which, in hindsight, I can see he was not a fight guy. I'm not a super fight guy either, but whatever. So anyway, a couple beers in, I'm taking him back to my parents' house, driving down Nubbin Ridge, which I've driven Nubbin Ridge a good jillion times.
Right.
Sober and drunk. Not admitting to any crime here, just saying, theoretically, I could have maybe done it with a few beers in me before. But he's like, the whole way, he's like, I don't understand you people. I was like, what do you mean? He's like the hills and the curves and that, okay, whatever. But you guys have trees that are growing out of the freaking white lines. It's like, yeah, all over the place. Like that one tree on Nubbin Ridge going on to Ebenezer. It's a big old tree that's like literally the root structure is pushing up the edge of the road. And you always see chunks of box trucks that get stuck up in the higher corner of the tree that's always there. Like that kind of stuff is normal to us. That's like, it's not weird here. It just is. That's what we do. But like, he's out in Colorado, which Colorado has everything straight. Like everything's square and straight in Colorado. They don't have curvy roads, period. But like they don't have like their shoulder, like their easement or whatever you call it, their right of way that the city or the county or the state has on all roadways is like 8 feet. So like the road ends and there's 8 feet of flat ground before anything by law. And we have trees.
Probably for snow removal.
Right.
So you got somewhere to pile it up.
Right. We have trees growing out of that shit and, whatever. And so that's just normal to us. Like I get it from his perspective, like it's being crazy, but it's just normal.
I would say like 10 years ago, there was a one of those like plow/salt trucks that had like turned over.
Yeah, it happens.
And I'm like, I would have thought they had, at least like chains or decent
Well,
snow
the thing
tires.
to me, I think going on that same thing is like we have trees growing out of the side of the roads, but we also have a good number of roadways around here where like you have barely a full white line and then it's a 4-foot drop.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you got on your tires. If you're trying to, if you're plowing it, you don't see exactly where you are on that road and you get one of your front tires off the side of that into that thing, you're going off it no matter what. And you're going to roll over no matter what because it's just physics at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's all I got on the weather.
Fun snow talk.
Yeah. It's supposed to be cold for the rest of the weekend, and then it's going to warm up and be rainy for the rest of next week.
Yeah, I thought it was only supposed to go to like 62.
My sources tell me the kids aren't going back to school till Wednesday.
What?
That's what the betting line is amongst some board members and teachers whom I'm familiar with. Is they aren't.
So city and county said they should have like back roads and stuff clear this weekend. At least that's their goal. I don't know.
Yeah.
How they're looking at this point.
I mean, how we do another day like today where it's right at freezing, but the sun comes out for a while. That's really the saving grace to all this is those sets of sun we got.
I don't know if we got any accumulation, but it was snowing heavy for a good 2 hours.
Yeah, I didn't see anything really built up.
Like ran to the bank. The bank was like right before like 2:00. The bank was already like, hey, we're closing at 2. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like this isn't very bad right now. But okay.
Yeah. And it really, if it's cold enough, it's dry. It doesn't stick to anything. Like it'll stick to the snow that already's there. But if the road's clear, it just blows off the road.
I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just temperatures were already starting to drop because they were dropping. I mean, it's probably low 20s right now. Well, so, I mean, it was dropping fast.
This week
that was a weird thing
Knoxville
yesterday. Like it didn't feel like it was that cold
because it wasn't. Because it was 4 degrees the day before. When it's 27 and it's been 4 for the last couple of days. It doesn't feel. Yeah. All right, so to shift off it, but stay on a little bit of the weather stuff. I was a little perturbed with that. I like to hate on my utility companies. TVA asked people to conserve power usage because of the bitter cold. They didn't want to have rolling brownouts like they did last year.
It's an interesting story on that. It was, I think it was like a YouTube thing or something that popped up. They were talking about, I think it was like Alberta, where they were at like -30, -40. But they put out like a alert, I guess, like from the province or whatever, put out like a text message that I guess it went out to everyone, kind of like an emergency thing, that basically asked people, like, hey, if you can, like, conserve power, because they were basically already like borrowing like power, like they were over what that province can produce basically in megawatts or whatever. So they were actually borrowing from, I think, Saskatchewan. But I mean, that alert actually worked, because within like, I think they said within like 5-10 minutes,
right? I mean, I would
they
bet
had like a drop that was enough to get them like to where
right
they weren't in danger anymore of the rolling brownouts.
It's a functional difference. I get it. Like, because I would say, God, you get up into that kind of shit, you're looking at everybody has a wood stove. Like, nobody has a house that doesn't have a wood stove or a fireplace of some sort.
Yeah, but that's not your main source of heat.
Usually it's
that's
not,
like
but,
that's your extra.
But
like you have oil or gas or something.
You need to cut it. You need to cut back on your utility usage of it. You're going to have the wood stove fired up pretty good if it's 10 below.
Oh yeah,
air temperature at 4 p.m.
Probably. Yeah.
So you could cut down you could turn off the heater in the house a little bit. Like, the one that bothered me about is the TVA.
It's not the heater. They were basically going around. They're like, hey, like, is your bathroom light on? Like, turn it off.
The TVA request, though, being like, try to conserve energy, especially during peak periods. Which when is a peak period when it's 4 degrees outside?
Usually daytime.
Right, but I would think realistically, and this is what kind of bothered me about it, it's like they ask people not to use their ovens.
Right.
And it's like, well, because that's peak period. Why is it peak period? Because people are cooking fucking dinner. Especially when I can't go out because I'm snowed in. What do you like? So you want me to eat frozen food? Like, it was just a really odd request to me. And I know I'm a utility hater, so take it from that perspective. Like, so I'm not going out because I'm told it's not safe to travel right now. I need to stay in my house. Not to mention most restaurants and stuff aren't open, so I can't go get food or get a hot meal to put in my face or my family's face. You want me to turn my heat down, and you want me to not use my stove.
I thought they said no ovens. So I would think the stovetop is probably using a little bit less power versus your oven. Generally, if you're putting stuff in the oven, you've got it in there for at least 30, 45 minutes to an hour.
Don't cook. I mean, I don't know. I took it as don't cook. I know that's overtaking it.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, they said, hey, if you can, use your microwave.
Really?
Yeah.
I would think a microwave. I think whatever. I don't know how that works.
It's faster, and I guess it's using less electricity than
an electrical engineer to tell me exactly what the watt usage is.
I mean, it's going to depend on, if you have a super old model of stove or microwave on either end of it. But
I'll tell you what, I was putzing about on the Facebooks, and our old buddy Matt Shears in North Carolina, apparently his granddad's farmhouse has an old wood fire range. And so his wife had shared a video on her Facebook page of him trying to get this thing started, which is clear he wasn't sure what he was doing, but,
right.
He got it started. I was like, man, tell you what, that'd be a nice thing to have right now in Knoxville. I wouldn't be mad. I guess one of the things I'd like to have down here at some point, I would like to put a wood stove in here. Mostly because the wife's a pyro and she likes to burn shit. She would be burning shit all the time. But, chicken or the egg, it cuts down on my electric bill.
Plus there's the minuses to it.
Right.
There's also drawing power because the wood stoves got the fan that's blowing too.
Yeah, but not like a furnace, like an electric furnace does. And so if I could take 10% off the furnace, it's not going to take that in the fan. But chicken or the egg. So TVA survived. It was a record day apparently, and they survived. I mean, the secondary part of what kind of bothered me about it's like, okay, well, didn't we have this issue last year? And you fired some guy and swore that we were going to make sure this doesn't happen again, which it didn't. So I guess they kept their word.
Oh, the rolling brownouts.
Yeah, but it's like, and again, I get it. Like the whole point, like that same thing with the salt and the plow crews and stuff like that. We are not built to have a bunch of infrastructure for situations like this because they don't happen often. And so I don't want to I agree that the idea if we had we had that huge snowstorm, let's double our fleet of snow trucks and let's triple our salt reserves in the wherever we hold our salts and stuff like that. And, as we're going through the budget of the summer here coming up, we're like, why are we doubling our winter whatever budget?
Right.
Now, this summer, I might be like, okay, yeah, cool. But next summer, I'm going to be like, we never have real winters around here. What are you talking about? And so I get that. And I appreciate that. I think that's correct. And I'm not opposed to that. But I think the TVA, the utility power company one, I think to me, it's like, you got to figure something out. Like we got to get them nukes online and have a way that we can spike power usage and not freak out. What are you shaking your head at? The nukes are coming.
they're coming, but I wouldn't hold your hopes out for it. That's like a 20, 30 year like kind of like outlook.
No, I don't know what the time frame is because that's with these new ones. That's the whole point is that they're not because they're prefab at some GE factory in Ohio, and it's just a local install.
I would say at least 5 to 10 years. I don't know.
Like because they approved sites. I don't remember. I'll have to double check with Scott and Jesse on the time frame of that. But like they approved the site use, and I'm pretty sure the way they described it is
I
it's
think
like
they approved to do like a test one in like Oak Ridge, but I mean, again, that's just like a test one. I don't think it's really going to be functional. I think it's just kind of more of let's get it up and running and see like how it runs.
Oh, either let's get them around. Get them. Every neighborhood needs one. Let's do it. Let's get them up. Let's get them home. Get them online. Let's get this shit going. I mean, I think to me, you want the greater political whatever. You want a booming economy in America. Cheaper power. Just make cheaper power. Figure out how to get us more cheaper power.
I mean, that'd be great, but we have lobbyists kind of keep us to the petrochemical route.
Okay.
I think I've sent it to you. I think we talked about it a little bit on the show a while back. It was Jimmy Carter, like before he left office in like 81, was talking about and was trying to encourage the federal government to like invest more money in like solar at that time.
Yeah, Shell.
Because he was the one he got made fun of, I guess, when there was a big like cold snap that was going on in the late 70s. He encouraged people to like, turn down your thermostat and put a sweater on. Everyone's like, "You're fucking stupid." It's like, that's pretty fucking logical. Like, A, cut down your power bill, and it's like, yeah, you can just fucking put a sweater on.
That's why, like, everybody, like, I see a bunch of posts, people are like, all you people out there saying you like cold weather more than the 100 degrees in the summer, you better be out there having a good time. I'm like, A, I never said anything about being outside.
Right.
B, yeah, I can put on a jacket, I can put on another jacket, I can put on some fat socks. More or less, I'm going to be okay.
Right.
There's a level of nakedness you can be before it doesn't matter anymore.
I'm with you on
fucking
that.
hot.
I argue with people. I'm like, I'd much rather be hot. And I'm like, no. I was like, I get ornery when I get really hot.
As opposed to all the time? Okay, sure.
Oh, yeah. I get more ornery when it's really hot. And like you said, there's only so much you can do to try to like cool off. But like warming up.
Yeah, there's just like, I mean, spit on your own face and stand in a fan, and that's as cool as you're going to get no matter what it is. Mr. Jacobs got a little bit of flack for not being in town when the storm hit.
I saw that. He went to
A
Texas?
dumb, he's in Iowa. He was doing the caucus.
He
was out stumping for Trump.
Yeah.
Like, that's what everybody should be getting on him about is stumping for Trump, not being here. Like, who gives a shit? Like, they leave all the time. Things happen when they're out of town.
Oh, they gave who was that? Ted Cruz.
Well, that was it because he ran off to fucking Acapulco or whatever.
Right.
And left his family in the cold or something like that.
Well, that was when like most of the state had was out of power and they had like a crazy like ice storm or whatever.
Yeah. I remember talking about that on here. It's like, oh yeah, like how useful could he actually be? But at the same time, it doesn't look good.
Right.
And it doesn't. I mean, what was it? Biden was at Fort Hood when the New Palestine train derailment went down. And didn't go back to the White House, like finish the retreat or whatever that he was on, didn't go back to the White House to address the issue for a couple days or whatever. And it's like, it's going to happen. Like, at the end of the day, there's no real vacation when you have that job. Like, you don't get to just not be, like, you can go somewhere and do vacation-like things, but, it's not like Mayor Jacobs didn't get a text or a phone call and some updates, and I'm sure he was making some phone calls and talking to people, making sure things were getting done the way he wanted them to get done. It
can just be construed as not caring about him. It's like, oh, we got this shit going on in your area that you're over, and you're supposed to be kind of taking care of.
Like it's just such a standard. Like it is a bipartisan trope.
Yeah,
is if your guy does it, I'm going to call him out for it. If my guy does it, I'm going to look the other way. And you're going to call my guy out for it. And then when I'm calling your guy out for the same thing, you're going to look the other way. It's just one of those, like, nobody's ever consistent about it, I guess, is the problem. And then, so the question is do we expect them to be 100% on call every minute of every day?
They're consistently calling out the other side, but they won't call themselves out.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it inconsistent.
No, I mean, it's the principle of what you're complaining about is the inconsistency.
Yeah.
Because the complaint is valid, but you're inconsistent on who you apply the complaint to. Whatever.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Potato, tomato. Yes. Yeah, that was the biggest, the weather and that. And whatnot. I had Becky Massey today. Did you get a chance to listen to it? I tried to send it to you. Get you some.
No, not yet.
Okay. So yeah, so a couple weeks ago you were talking about how in Nashville there was some legal fighting over some redistricting going on, and the numbers of the districts not being right or something like that. Do you remember talking about that?
Partially. Oh yeah. It had to do with, I guess, how they number the districts. 'Cause
Right.
then it altered.
So there's two rules in state senate district rule, like districting rules. Odd numbers vote with the governor, are on the governor's ballot. Even numbers are on the president's ballot.
Right.
Right. And then the second rule is that if the totality of your district and someone else's district is in the same county, they cannot be on the same ballot. Now, I'm curious to know if Nashville has more than two. I didn't follow up with that question. I feel like Nashville might have more than two, so it's automatic. But the idea being that every cycle there's going to be a local senator on the ballot. Even though I don't get to vote when Briggs is on the ballot, that campaign is active while the other ones isn't. And so what was happening in the Nashville one, when they redistricted and renumbered, they renumbered what wasn't even into an odd, making it line up with, or vice versa.
Right.
They when they changed the number for the new district, it made it match the other one that was in Davidson County, and they can't be on the same election cycle. And that's why it was problematic.
I thought it was just seen more as, I don't really like
I mean, it was
gerrymandering.
It was absolutely gerrymandering, but the complaint, the legal complaint that actually had some validity to it was that it's breaking the rules on how senator elections work.
Ah.
I mean, it's absolutely gerrymandering. That's why we redistrict. That's as much of why we redistrict as the theoretical actual point of redistricting.
I thought more it was going to, I guess, kind of like outweigh, one cycle over the other cycle. Like one cycle is going to have 8, well, the odd cycle has like 5 or whatever.
Right. Well, I mean, again, like Knoxville has 2 Knoxville has 3 state senators that represent it, but 2 of them are fully inside Knox County, and then you have McNally, who is Anderson County with some of Knox County, and so his cycle is not as important because he's not completely within.
No, somewhere I was thinking he might have been Blount County, but no, thinking of somebody else.
And so I would think Nashville has at least 3 or 4. But I don't know. Maybe there's another rule that's further down in the state constitution that says you have to have an even number of senators in a county if you have more than one. Like it has to go from 2.
I don't think state senators is proportional.
Yeah, it's by people.
Is it?
Yeah, it's 3-1. The House represent a state house is like 200,000 people that they represent, and a state senator is 600. No, other way. Sorry, a state senator is about 200,000 people, and a House rep is a third of that, so 66,000 people or so, give or take. It's basically 3-1, but they don't line up, so it gets all sorts of weirdisms. I laid into her about the hemp thing.
How so?
I mean, it's like, I was like, look, we were sold. This was sold, and I know people in the industry that got on board with it because this was going to make us valid and legitimate. And we supported it for that. I didn't. I refused to because I knew something like this would happen. I knew you guys would pull something out of it. I knew there was something out there. Like, I refused to do it. Like, I can go back and I could cite some people that I talked to because I had a number of vendors. I was like, help me walk me through this bill. Because Anthony called me. He's like, you need to talk to this dude from this company. This bill's coming up in the state that we probably need to support so we can get this, that, and the other. I was like, okay, cool. So I call the guy. I spent like an hour on the phone. He's talking me through the whole thing. It's, it's like, we don't really want the new tax. We don't really want the regulatory oversight, but, it's like we could accept those costs to go from being this kind of gray area. It's unclear the legalities of what we're doing to it's clearly defined. We know we're legal. We know what's illegal. Moving forward, it's like cool. All right, that does sound like a fair trade. Like, I mean, philosophically, no, that's stupid. It should just be legal, and it shouldn't be treated any different than a Coke. But whatever. If we're gonna make it some trade off to get us some progress, fair enough. I'll get on. I can respect that, but I don't trust it. I don't trust it. There's no way that they're just gonna let this. That it's gonna be this easy for us. Then, sure enough. Because like what's crazy to me is like, and I was thinking about this and it came to mind when I was talking to Becky about it. It's like, I went on that whole pitch and a fit about how they asked us to divide the substrains after the fact. But when they did that, when you go to the revenue site to show that, they have you open this little worksheet inside the Tennessee Department of Revenue page, and when you go into your hemp stuff, there's a little arrow, and you hit the arrow, and it gives you which one you want to show sales for.
Right.
So it's HHC, THCA, Delta 8, Delta 10, and one other one is built in, and then they have the last one that says other, and then you blank where if you have one that's other and you want to fill it in, you fill it in and put it over there. And so Revenue was planning on taxing and selling THCA because they built the website to take it that way.
Yeah.
And now agriculture is redefining THCA, which is going to basically force Revenue to take that back off. So this is where it gets so confusing to me. It's because, Revenue obviously thought A was legal. And then when they were asked to divide it by strain, they wanted to know how much A it was. So why would Revenue put that in there if the way that it was written was clearly stating that they're taking A out? Not to mention, nobody that I know of that I've talked to about it would have been on board with this if they were excluding A.
Right.
There's no way. Because almost all of them are majorly THCA is their top selling products that they do. And so, to me, they just we all got the big old bait and switch. They promised us everything, and they took the one thing that really mattered, or they're looking at taking the one thing that really matters. We'll see come February if this new rule holds.
Where's your lobbyist when you need them?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's because that's the question to me. And I asked Becky about it. I was like, how are they making this decision? This doesn't seem to be like what the law was told me was going to happen. Who is telling them to interpret it this way? Because I don't feel like they would just do that. Like, why are they interpreting this way? And there's a Supreme Court case going on right now in the federal government that's an interesting one on the topic. I can't remember what it's called. There's some technical legal term for it, which is basically the legal framework for how the U.S. federal government lets departments make their own laws. And it's basically an old Supreme Court case basically says if it's not clearly defined in the law written, then the department gets to make it up.
Yeah, so it's the Chevron doctrine.
Yeah, which I'm hoping, and it doesn't necessarily change anything for Tennessee, but as I understand that case, I'm hoping the current Supreme Court says no. If it's not clearly defined, you can't touch it.
That could have a huge, because it's brought. I think the story I saw recently that's brought it back to the Supreme Court are it's a family fishery up in like the Northeast.
Yeah, because it was something about what was the fish? I can't remember, halibut or something like that. That the EPA
thought it was just kind of like the wildlife and fisheries or something like that.
But I mean that's under.
But
that's
they would
inside.
have to pay. They'd have to pay to have an inspector on board.
Right.
The story I read said that they get reimbursed for that, so it's not an actual fee that's coming out of them that they have to pay for.
I mean, the version of the story that I heard was that you had to basically have an employee that does nothing but.
Or you had to have an inspector. I don't know if it could necessarily be an employee. But
we have to pay for the way the story read, or was the way the story was presented when I was listening to it.
Yeah.
Was that you have to pay for the inspector to be on your boat,
right,
and watch you fish.
You may have to initially pay for it, but apparently you get reimbursed for it. It's like a rebate or whatever. I mean, which you probably have to apply for, which I can understand. That's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but it goes back to that principle that I was pitching a couple weeks ago. It's like, let's start with assuming the best out of people and get on them when they do it wrong instead of assuming the worst.
We've tried that.
Assuming the worst and going.
We've tried that,
but not.
But not in the fisheries.
But no, from a legal standpoint, that's not that. I think the point I'm trying to get to, though, is from a legal standpoint, that is not the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries whom answers to the EPA or whoever it is in the poll process or whatever. It's not their. They just because they're a governmental department doesn't mean they get to make decisions on how to interpret things. I don't think that's. I don't think that's right. Is the point I'm getting to?
No, but they can make rules on enforcing of the rules in which they have. Which they have rules on overfishing.
Right, but the question is...
So there has to be a way to then stop overfishing other than how else do you even find out if something's been overfished?
I mean, I think same way we do it in the regular hunting, like you report your harvest when you hunt.
Yeah, because I couldn't shoot a deer and harvest it
You absolutely
myself,
could.
and
But do you like
people be
how
none
many
the
deer?
wiser.
How many deer? I would bet.
I would bet there's a
I would
good number
comfortably
of.
bet that there are more roadkill deer in a year than there are illegally harvested deer in a year. But it's
I
obviously
could
obviously
see that
works
as a-
as far as but for Tennessee's sake in whitetail deer, it's obviously working in the management process. Yes, I'm assuming that Tennessee Wildlife has an equation that they look at and go, we assume that we estimate that the population of whitetail in Tennessee is X.
Right, you factor in variance.
Right, and we expect X percent where we want X percent to get harvested this year, and that's why they changed the rules on not change the rules, but change quotas and stuff like that. Make more or less hunts available depending on what they estimate the herd is at.
Right.
And but I'm sure in that equation when they're looking at it, we assume that year in and year out there are X number of deer harvested a year that we don't hear about, that don't get reported, that are done out of season illegally, in season illegally, on private land where they don't have the right to hunt on it, and then they don't report it because they don't want to get in trouble for being on private land or whatever.
Right.
And so they do the math on that. And so, like, to me, I get it. I get that it's different in the sense that this is a professional fishing vessel. This is a money-making enterprise, which has more incentive to maybe skirt or try to take advantage of a situation or whatever. But I mean, I think that would be at least the starting point is you have some sort of harvesting, whatever. I mean, hell, even with Tennessee, staying on the Tennessee deer one, it's like, you have a contact point, which I think is a little bit much, but I understand it. You have a contact point when you take a deer to get processed. All the processors that process wild game in Tennessee have an obligation to at least make sure that you did your reporting.
Right.
And they do their set of reporting. I'm sure our guys out that we use all the time, I bet you that they have paperwork at the end of the day, and they say, how many deer did you bring in today? How many deer were brought to you today, rather?
Right.
And at least as long as those numbers are close, TWRA is not going to be down there bothering. But if all of a sudden the processor's getting 5,000 deer a day and only 500 are getting reported in the same region, I'm sure TWRA agents are going to show up in their trucks and start hanging out and going around and being out in the woods.
Who's bringing all these in? Yeah.
Huh? Yeah. They're like, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
How are you guys getting? How are these many deer coming in and not being? I mean, people aren't reporting, obviously.
Right.
And so that, I mean, again, I think that's a more reasonable version of it. Because again, I think with the fishing one, you have to come back to dock at some point. It's not like you're just going to eat all those fish yourself. Like that's the difference, especially the TWRA, like in the deer example. Most people, if they're like legally, you can't sell it anyway. So you're hunting for yourself or to share with friends, but not to sell. So if you're out there fishing professionally because you need the money, you're going to sell that to somebody in the middle. You're going to sell it to somebody who takes it to a market, or you're going to go to the market yourself. But there's other layers of people that are going to get involved. And for you to somehow be having 10,000 fish, but only reporting 1,000, it's going to start getting pretty obvious.
I mean, that person you're selling to is not going to look over your books and see what you reported.
They will if they're obligated, just like our processor is. If you make it reasonable and simple, that it's like, okay, you're a wholesaler of fish. I come to you and I sell you my catch of the day. I mean, hell, just in paperwork, just for your own finances paperwork, I bought X number of fish for X number of dollars. More likely it's X number of pounds of fish for X number of dollars, but
yeah.
That there's math in there that you say, well, the average weight of the fish is this, so this guy brought in this many fish. You can do it that way. I like the idea that you have to pay for an inspector, even if you get your money back, seems a little bit heavy-handed to me. That was way too much detail into that particular item, other than to say, I don't know if I'm okay. Well, I lean towards the other way, I guess, is the bottom line for me. I lean towards, I don't think they should have like, if the law that is put on them to enforce says, we need you to make sure, let me think here.
No, I lean more in the opposite direction in that, I mean, at this point, I mean, it's been happening for the past at least like 10, 20 years to where populations of harvestable livelihoods basically have been going down, 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 down. So at this point, they are protecting the actual economy of different fish, wildlife, etc. So it is within their interest to have these industries be able to stay in business.
I just think there would be there's still a less impactful way to get to what you're after. I don't think this one particularly is.
I don't see much middle ground in it.
Yeah, so
you're either having someone checking it, or
it couldn't be
you're having them self-check themselves.
Well, no, you have it. You have an agent that's at the dock that you report to when you return to the harbor for the day. Which if you could have one guy that sees a dozen.
We're quite an ingenious species.
Sure, which means we're ingenious enough probably to figure out how to sneak it by a guy that's even on the boat. I don't know. I mean,
right. But you're just adding that one extra layer of security.
Bad actors are bad actors. You know, I mean, they're going to be bad actors.
Yeah. Where you're just adding that one extra layer of security into it.
All right. I guess I'm more of an optimist.
I mean, I guess most businesses shouldn't have an accountant anymore, and it's just whatever somebody else crunches the numbers, and just go with it. No one should ever double check it.
I mean,
what do you pay your accountant for?
To navigate the ridiculousness that is the Tennessee.
Outside of that,
the state and local and federal tax system. That's it. That's all I pay him for. I can do the numbers on whether I'm profitable or not by myself. That shit's easy. I can do that math.
Bad exam.
I'm just saying, the entire to me, and yes, there are people who aren't there, and that's somebody that's a helpful tool in their business portfolio. That's somebody who's good with numbers, helps them to format the numbers in a way that's understandable to make decisions off of and stuff like that. Yes, a finance person would be the title I would give them. An accountant is just a person who fills numbers in the right blanks, so that the right people get to see those numbers, so that you don't get an audit. Because the tax code is so goddamn complicated that we had to create an entire industry to navigate it. Which I would assume that the
business is fucking complex, as I'm sure you well know.
I would assume that the accounting industry is part of the reason why it's so goddamn complex, because the more complex it is, the more jobs they get to have, the more employees they get to have, and the more money the guys that own and operate tax firms.
You think I think international or the National Accounting Association has some lobbyists?
I think Intuit got in trouble a couple of years ago.
Do what?
Intuit that does TurboTax.
Okay.
They got sued they got a big class action suit against them a couple of years ago because they did their whole big free whatever, which is a lie. It's that they get paid by the federal government to do your taxes for you at a very low level, like a very small price. But all they're really doing is trying to talk you into buying their premium service in the process. Right. You could have an extra $500 coming back to you on your taxes. Pay $25.99 for this add-on to your free tax service,
right? And
we'll do it. And so they're taking that $25.99, but then they were also taking the federal government's tax assistance program, $10 per 1040 EZ that they filed.
Yeah.
And so basically they were telling you you're going to get more back if you use this upgrade. And say, oh, well, no, I'm sorry, we were wrong. We didn't get that upgrade or whatever. Yeah. But still filing it as a 1040 EZ. So the feds gave them $10 for doing it, and they
were getting 25. Yeah.
Because it's I don't know anymore if that's true, but I would say companies like QuickBooks, big fucking companies that are especially in the digital tax world, I would bet they have some pretty good lobbyists and influence in the game. That if somebody like what was it, Rush? Was it a Rush Limbaugh thing, or was it a Dave Ramsey that the flat tax, which is what Tennessee taxes are? It's the flat tax instead of an income tax. I guarantee you Intuit and QuickBooks and those guys are pushing back on a flat tax.
I don't think it's that crazy that they've tried to add that the accountants themselves or the accounting industry has tried to lobby the federal government to add more additional taxes to bring more.
No, I wouldn't say additional taxes, just make it more complicated.
Right. I think it's complicated just because of just how complex things are. And going back to our ingenuity as well, of just trying to save a few things here and there. It's oh, well, if you categorize this as this. So some of it's just kind of reactive.
Right.
Kind of well, fuck. Like, oh, income. Well, I didn't get income. Like, all my paychecks went directly to my Swiss bank account, so I never actually, like, saw it. I never got it. It never hit my American bank account, so I don't think I should have to pay taxes for it. And it's like, well, no, you still got to tax on income that you received as an American citizen, even if you funneled it into blah, blah, blah account.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I don't know. I don't know if it needs to be that complicated. I don't know.
I would love for it to not be that complicated, but, I mean, businesses are very complex.
But I mean, here's the question. So, like, making it so complicated that we have this giant agency, IRS, that has to go out and hire and employ a bunch of people to go check to make sure you did your math
IRS has
right.
been along longer than the complex system that we have now.
Okay.
Or more complex system than we have
do you
now.
think it has grown? Do you think the IRS in population
No,
of employees
we have less than we used to have.
has grown in cost? I think it's grown in cost at or above the same rate that it has grown in complexity.
Say again? Oh, I don't understand what the hell you just said.
Do you think the mass that is the IRS has grown in costs at or above the same rate as the tax code has grown in complexity? The more complex the tax code gets, the bigger the IRS gets, or the more expensive it takes the IRS to do its job.
The more it's costing, I guess.
Right. So the question is,
American tax. How much is costing the American?
Right. By closing these, I won't even say closing these loopholes. By complicating the tax code, making it harder. Like, it goes back to the same stupid argument I make every time when we start talking about millionaires and stuff like that. It's like, it is cheaper for Donald Trump as a citizen, not as the president or whatever, but it was cheaper for Donald Trump as a citizen to pay $1 million, $2 million a year to accountants to handle his taxes than it was to pay his taxes. That answers everything to me right there. Because if it was cheaper just to pay his taxes, he'd just pay his fucking taxes. Because that's all he cares about is that bottom line. Right? So, hey, Trump, you made this much money this year. You owe us $1 million. Okay, well, I could hire $1 million lawyer and pay $500,000 in taxes. Or I could just pay $1 million in taxes. I'm going to go with $1 million in taxes because at the end of the day, that's cheaper than the combined of the other. Because that's all he cares about. It's not about whether it's the right or wrong thing to do. It's that literally whatever the cheaper option is the one he wants to go out of. And the code is so damn complicated that the people that know how to navigate it know how to make it cheap enough that they can that they can demand their salary and still have the client pay taxes and it be cheaper than they would have if the client had done it by themselves. So,
I get what you're saying, but I don't see any.
I mean,
it's someone with any kind of fucking common sense that would be willing to do that. Hire someone to pay them more than the savings.
They're not. That's what I'm saying. It's the other way. Let's take Trump out. Trump's a bad example because there's so much bad.
I'm not focusing on that. Okay. I'm focusing on like
me, for example.
Maybe I misheard you.
I don't know. This isn't true for me, for example. But let's say, let's say I get to a point in a couple more years that we got 5 stores. I'm doing $10 million a year in sales.
Blah, blah, blah.
Half of that's mine. Whatever. I got $5 million that I'm showing in income, which in that bracket I'd pay $1 million or so a year in taxes, theoretically, on a 20% annual tax basis. Somewhere in there, I'd pay about $1 million, right? Just as it sits right in front of me. Okay. Now, I could hire somebody for $250,000 a year to handle all my taxes, find me all the things, file my paperwork for me, do all that kind of stuff, which makes my life easier, and only pay $500,000 a year in taxes. So my combined payment, if I have the accountant do it with me, is $250,000 to them, $500,000 for them, so $750,000. Or I do it straight out in front of me for $1 million. Which option am I going to take?
Okay, I thought you were. I thought you had said the inverse.
No, sorry, I apologize. I probably was a little bit.
That's all I was like. What fucking person would do that?
Right, because the only person that would do that, if it was the other way, is somebody potentially like Trump who hates the United States government so much and wants to be a dickhead to them that he would rather spend more money not paying them and paying somebody else just to say fuck you, which those people exist too. Yeah. And again, I think Trump might fall into that category. That's why part of the reason I wanted to take him off the example. But realistically, no, Trump even as well. I think Trump just whatever it is that's the cheaper version is the one he's going to take.
Right.
And so make it simple and basic and straightforward because I don't think it needs to be that complicated. I do think there are people who make it complicated in order to avoid things. But if you make it simple and straight and forward, I would rather pay $700,000 in taxes than $500,000 in taxes and $200,000 to an employee. if I felt like the government was good at what they did and they actually used my taxes well. But like, you know, like, I mean, it's an old Rogan thing that he used to say all the time. One of the reasons he left California, he's like, I don't give a shit about paying taxes. It isn't about me not wanting to pay taxes. That's not why I'm leaving California. I'm leaving California because I get taxed a lot. And I look around and I don't see any real positive gains from my tax money. It's part of the reason he said he left California.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for a lot of people, myself included. I sit here and I do the math on how much I pay in taxes, both federally, state, local. And I look around and go, I'm not sure I see the value. And we're a cheap state. And I'm a cheap person, so that makes sense. I'm sure Rogan would come here and be like, this place is crazy cheap. And for what little I do pay in taxes, they do great stuff. But that would be Rogan's version because he's comparing it to California, where I'm comparing it to some imaginary dreamland that will never exist because I'm crazy like that. So, where do we start on that? How do we get to Trump's taxes?
You brought up Trump. I don't know. We
Well,
started
it's not
talking about
Trump's
taxes.
It's just how do we get to the crazy tax code thing? I was complaining about the hemp thing. I got on to Becky about the hemp thing. She's got a couple of things she's introducing this year that I don't really care. I mean, I get it. I'm not opposed to what she's pitching. Out of your, maybe I'll stop using my black market bookie and go to a like DraftKings or something like that, because out of the special gaming tax for online sports betting, one of her projects, which is a it's basically it's like the Tennessee Promise for pre-K. It's just a
Head Start,
a scholarship thing to get money into people that need help getting pre-K daycare kind of stuff set up. And then another one is there's apparently, I don't know, I'm still confused kind of on it. Apparently there's a significant uptick recently of elder abuse, and that elder abuse being kind of a manipulative theft of elders, in that grandkids, hey grandma, I need some money to pay this guy or he's going to hurt me, like just that kind of stuff. Or like lying to, like, say,
or like online scam type thing?
No, but it's like people like actual, like apparently like 60% of the victims of this crime are the elder person knows the perp, that it's a grandkid or a nephew or a niece that's coming to them and asking for help, asking for money.
Oh, I was thinking it was like
and
some
using
kind of like random person.
No, using
like,
it for like,
hey,
yeah, because I
this
tried
is
to
Tim.
joke there. I was like, I get calls all the time from the "Are you on Medicare?" There's this new Medicare savings program, and I'm like, yeah, they're really going after the old people around here. And so it's like, so apparently what they're asking is, I guess it's inside the TBI, you would have a hotline, so that if you're a banker and a person comes to you, an elder person comes to you, and you think it's a little bit sus that they're asking to take out $100,000 in savings in cash, you report it to them, and they'll send a local investigator out to try to figure out what's going on to make sure that it's not somebody taking advantage of this older person. Which, you know,
Yeah, kind of in that note, I clicked the wrong button a few months ago when I
are
was
you a
buying.
Nigerian prince now?
No, I was buying like a gift card at like CVS, and if you're buying a gift card, like it prompts you and like basically asks you, like, you know, did someone ask you to do this in lieu of something else or whatever?
Oh, really?
Basically trying to like cut back on that fraud. But I guess I like misread it and was trying to like hurry through it and, you know, just kind of get through the transaction. So I'm just like, you know, looking at the card reader type thing. It's like, you know, different screens like popping up, like, yes, blah blah blah.
What's crazy?
And I was like, oh, sorry, I misread that.
What would make that harder is if they stop using cards for everything. You know, if we went back to cash. And real
Have we
checks.
stopped taking cash?
No.
Okay.
But if I'm trying to scam you, I'm not going to say send me $100 in cash, because everybody knows that's a scam.
Right.
You know, like that's a much harder scam to push through because I want it in gift cards because I'm untraceable.
Right. I mean, gift cards have been like a thing for many years, so it's just one thing.
Right,
that,
but it's
that
the
criminals
digital gift card that operates like a credit card for a particular client is what makes it easy.
Well, I'm talking about like physical gift cards,
Right. And
which are still, I guess, digital and
right.
and
Like the Visa gift cards now that are just cash basically, but they're cashless cash gift cards. Like it's just a $25 gift card you can use wherever you want. Like a
Right, but you got to pay for like the tax up front, which I thought was kind of fucked up. When I was like, oh, let me buy someone a $50 gift card, and I'm like, Why am I paying tax on this? I'm like,
That's not right.
It should be $50.
Yeah, you shouldn't pay tax on that.
Oh, no, I guess they do on the back end.
Because they're going to charge, right, when you give
Right,
that,
no.
if you gave me that $50 gift card, which you didn't.
No, I want to say, like, if you buy, like, a Visa, it's like a Visa or MasterCard, I think you pay tax on it right then when you buy it. I don't think it's straight up $50. But if you bought, if I went to, like, Target or something and got, like, a Target gift card, you can buy it for $50 flat or whatever.
The sales tax, you're not buying, like, the sales tax is when the good or service is exchanged, and there is no exchange of a good or service at that point. I mean, theoretically, the service is there, but
That's what the thing is. That, like, they're essentially providing that service of giving you access to any place it takes.
But wherever that person goes and uses that gift card is going to get.
They're still paying sales tax, right?
And that's why I think that's why they're not supposed to charge it on the sale of the card, because they're essentially now double charging. So if you bought,
it may not be a full sales tax. It may be like a 3%. I don't know.
If you bought me a $50 gift card and paid $54.87 or whatever it is after sales tax, and I went and bought something for $45.75 that came out to $50 even, that $45 item now has
double tax.
Yeah, almost $10 in sales tax on it, which is almost twice as much as it's supposed to get taxed. Now, it could be a way that states are trying to protect their sales tax, thinking that you're going to buy this $50 gift card and mail it to your buddy in a different state.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I may be thinking of that wrong.
I remember when Grandma used to send me a $5 bill in a special, like, Hallmark card that was 4 bills.
Mm-hmm.
Had a little window in it, so the front of the card was like the picture of Abe Lincoln telling me about how Merry Christmas he wants it to be for me. And then I open it up and, like, there's the rest of Abe and all his $5.
They're always looking off to the side. They're never looking at you.
I know, he won't look at me. He's ashamed of how racist he was. So, yep. Becky, I'm interested. I'm really excited to watch this race for Becky. I'm really curious how District 6 is going to react to the situation. She has a primary competitor that is much more right than she is. We have a Tennessee, which is, at least as a government, is a leaning farther and farther right occupancy. I won't say the Tennesseans are leaning farther and farther right, but through the process of the partisan election, we're getting further and further right candidates. But you also have District 6 in Knox County, which includes District 18, District 4 in County Commission, District 18 in State House, which at least the Democrats think that they're going to take this year. Doubt it, but they think they are. District 4 in County Commission and School Board, which has that cat bike win. And so there's big chunks of District 6 for State Senate that are a little bit more left-leaning. And so it'll be interesting how the primary goes, particularly because traditionally whoever wins the primary is going to win that race. But if the further right candidate comes through that primary, are the more centrist, center-right people going to lean left because they don't want the far right, because we have a little bit more of a purple district in play. So I'm excited to see that kind of play out. I mean, I don't know. Like, I haven't met the other people yet. I've always liked Becky. Becky has been a fantastic guest. I've told her this on the show today. I've told her it many times before. She has the best constituent services that I've dealt with anybody that I've tried to talk to.
Right.
Constantly. And that's her goal. And I did ask her, because we were talking about it a couple weeks ago with the whole, like, growth plan craziness. It's like, when's somebody going to be the big boy in the room? Like, listen, people, we can either do this and get a plan together or deal with it as it comes. If you don't like my plan, I promise you dealing with it as it comes is going to be worse. So when are we going to get somebody to put their big boy pants on and be an adult? And so I kind of asked her about that. I was like, how do you deal with that where it's the right thing to do for the situation, but it is clearly the unpopular opinion of the people who you are talking to from your district? Like, how do you justify the anti-democratic nature of that? And she's like, it gets real hard, because, like, sometimes you got to do it and this, that, and the other. And it's just, I try to make the best decision I can with what I have in front of me. And it's a very good non-answer politician-y answer that she gave. But, I kind of put it to her. I tried to put it to her at least in a non-combative sort of way. But it's like, I don't know. Like, we got that. I think that's I think one of the things she said that was best, she's like, if I get, she's like, if 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 things, most of the people that I'm talking to agree with me on, it's a pretty good figure. She's like, I know better than to think that everything that I do, everybody's going to agree with
Right.
in my district, as far as my constituency goes. And it's like that's a pretty healthy outlook. I think that's right. So I think but she's weird in the sense that like she is a politician, very much so. She did 4 Christmas parades in 3 days because she loves doing Christmas parades, like me. And so she is a politician in the sense that she enjoys the game. Obviously, she enjoys doing both the job and the process of getting the job. But she doesn't seem to be a long-term ambitious politician.
You don't think she has further plans?
I don't think so. I mean, she was first elected to the seat in 2011. This will be her 4th
Was she in the House before?
cycle. I don't know what she did before. I did get to make a reference to being in her, I guess it's her dad's building,
Oh,
the Duncan Federal Building. It's named after her dad.
right.
I had to get to make a reference to seeing her brother in her dad's building. I was like, yeah, I saw Tim Burchett in your brother's old office in your dad's building. I didn't say it that way, but that's kind of
Right.
it's kind of what I said.
Okay.
I made the joke about how like I forget about going into secure buildings and how often I do it anymore, and how many things I have in my pocket at any given time.
We don't think about. Apparently, my grandfather got so pissed off. I guess he flew like years ago, and they took his pocket knife. I'm assuming it was probably one that he had had for years, or
Right.
whatever. He was
I mean,
just
it's
pissed off. I'm assuming this was like post 9/11, when they're like, "No, you can't bring a pocket knife on
Yeah.
the plane anymore."
Yeah,
Like,
it
what
sucks.
the fuck? It's
I
like,
get
you
it
just
for-
leave it here with us. He's like, I don't live here.
Yeah, for them old dudes that they're just like they're like I mean I've got my system, like I put my pants on and like I do my pocket check. Like I have my system, I have my things that are in my pockets. I feel weird if I don't have XYZ in my pockets. Like I know what's in my pockets at all times. Like I have an extra card in my wallet right now, and it bothers me because I could feel it. I could feel the difference in my wallet because I have a punch card stuck in there with some other stuff because I was trying whatever. I usually don't do the punch card thing. So anyway, yeah, trying to think of what else I missed. Pretty exciting week. A little bit more stuff's kind of trickling out about the voucher thing after our conversation with Jennifer last week. One of the things that I do see as a problem with at least what is projected to be the plan for these vouchers is they're going to give you $7,200 a kid if you pull them out of school, and they'll give you a $7,200 voucher to spend where you want for your kid's education.
Right.
But they're only spending $5,200 on my kid in Knox County schools. Like, can I say, hey, I'm going to pull my kid out, give me a voucher, and then I turn my voucher into Knox County schools so they can get that extra $2,000 for my kid? Like, if you're going to do it, it should be the same.
Yeah, I kind of see that.
I mean, what it is, and in reality, what it is that Knox County, being as big as it is, and
Has
this
to
is
factor in.
This is a rollover from the old BEP formula. Even in the new formula, it applies that, so the new FISA or whatever formula is like, this is our base dollar per student in the state of Tennessee. That number goes up based on negative factors, mental issues, physical issues, financial poverty issues of the household as well as the community that student is in. So you could be a decently well-off individual student, but the totality of your school is all below the poverty line. The state spends more on you and your neighbors than it does on me and my neighbors. Which again, I get that. I'm not complaining about that at all. And so basically, if you're in a more affluent county, and in a more affluent section of a more affluent county, the state's going to spend less on your kids than on other kids.
Yeah.
Which again, I get it. And Knox County especially, Knox County spends more on schools that go into other counties than, like, we don't get any money from other counties. We collect more in taxes that goes to the state that the state allocates for schools. We collect more than the state gives us back.
Right.
Because that's part of the deal is that since we're so big, they have a subtraction from the formula that says, hey, you've got the ability to make some of that up with your own tax base. You guys got to cover a portion of that.
Right.
Okay. I get it. No, I don't. But I understand the premise of what they're trying to get at with that. But again, so I could take my kid out of school and get $2,000 extra to spend on their education than the state's going to spend on my kid if I leave him in one of their schools. Just seems stupid. If you're going to do it, it should be the same number. Because to me, if the goal is, which I know it's not, but if the goal is to get better education to our students, then by making that an even number, you wherever you pick to put your kid, they're going to give that place this much money on your behalf. If that number is the same, whether it's a school, Knox County school, or a private school, then the incentive falls on Knox County schools to do better, to incentivize you to give them that check instead of giving it to a private school. Which, if that's the case, I like it. I like it a lot. Because that's one of those I asked Jennifer about it last week. I asked it at a public forum. I'll ask it to more candidates this year, too. It's like, these vouchers are coming, whether you like it or not. How are you going to make Knox County schools my choice instead of my de facto? And I think with the funding issue, the state's handicapping the school system, which I know that's the state's goal. They want to fuck them up. That's what they're after.
Yeah, so that's what their goal is.
It seems to be. I don't know what else it is.
How?
The state hates, like, the state is actively trying to kill public schools. I don't think there's any. Is there a debate on that?
Trying to kill public schools. I think they're just trying to dismiss them and make people more dismissive of them.
Okay, with the intent on getting people to take their kids out of them, which will therefore defund them, which will therefore make the argument of why public schools suck easier for the people who are doing the programs that we're talking about in the first place. I mean, this is the beginning. I mean, we're a couple steps into this cycle of trying to put significant damage on the public school systems because the public school systems teach the wokeness or whatever the fuck their complaint is.
We're privatizing it.
I'm not saying I necessarily agree with the impetus of why Governor Lee is so hell-bent on making this a real thing. That's not, like I told Becky and I told Jennifer last week, it's like, I'm open to the conversation about it. I'm curious. I think I think our public schools are failing. I don't think we're doing as well as we should be for the nation that we pretend to say that we are. I think we should be graduating smarter, better than we are regularly. I think we should have better than what we're doing. And maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But I feel like we're doing less than we could or should with our kids. Now, to continue down the path that we're doing doesn't seem like a solution to getting better. Now, is taking money out and sending the kids to private school a better answer? I don't know. But at least it's starting a conversation about trying to make something, at least a change. I'm trying to think of an analogy. I'm sure there's a couple of good analogies there.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a good analogy.
On that,
a moment ago.
You're the one you stumped me with last week. I've got a response to if you remember what it is.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I forgot it again. What was it? It sounds like what you're saying is that if you have a bunch of unruly kids in the classroom, you should have less teachers.
Right.
The pushback I have, and this doesn't make any sense out of context per se, but the pushback I have is that there's assumptions made in that statement that the kid has to be in the classroom. Why does the kid have to be in the classroom? Does the teacher have to let the kid stay in the classroom? I'm trying to remember the context of the whole conversation. I just remember thinking later that it's like there's an obligation. There was obligations that were built into the example that you have that I didn't think applied to the core of my concept.
What? There's no real obligations to it. It was a weird, just kind of like came out of like, I don't know where the hell it came from.
I'm not saying
it
you
just kind of came off the top of my head. I was just kind of like, oh.
I'm not saying you intended to put those
all right,
obligations
so you
in
got
there,
and
maybe it was an assumption on my part. Maybe I was assuming that those obligations were attached because of when you say stuff like school, because that's my pushback on Matt Shears and the park example for why private schools shouldn't get public money.
Right.
It's like, well, the difference in public parks and Cherokee Country Club is that the state doesn't make you send your kid to a park. You don't have to send your kid to a park or you get punished by the state. That's why I don't like that metaphor or simile.
Metaphor.
Whatever. That's why I don't like that. Like I get the idea behind that metaphor because when I first read that, it kind of stumped me like the one you gave me last week. It's like, but there's a major difference. You don't have to take your kid to the park. And so the state's saying you have to take your kid to your park, and you have to pay your own money if you want to go to a nicer park.
I could be wrong, but I think in the state of Tennessee, you don't have to send your kids to school. I remember, was it Last Week Tonight had an interesting thing on it like a month or so ago. It was talking about homeschooling and kind of pointed out that there's some states that have like little to no like oversight whatsoever. Like there was a good chunk of states. I don't want to say it was a majority or anything. Or it might have been a very small majority, but there were a number of states that basically, I think Tennessee may be one like that you have to tell them at least like once per year. Hey, right. I'm still homeschooling my kids. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to at least like
the
notify
wants to know
them.
Whether or not they need to send a check to the school district that you live in.
Yeah, I guess.
But
there's other states where you can basically do that one time, and then state
just assume you don't.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, well, let us know if you ever want to come back.
But I mean,
but that's where issues can kind of go down the line, and there was a number of people that were kind of pushing back on even the states like us that have that one time per year. Is that you run into child welfare issues?
Sure, but I think that's one of the problems we have with the school system is that we make them child welfare agents as well as teachers. Because I think that's one of the complaints from the teachers.
I agree. It's adding a burden.
I have to not only do I have to teach these kids 10,000 things every year, but I have to keep an eye on them. I have to check. I have to make them, because I think there's another one in play that. I'm curious where it officially came from, but I don't think it was voluntary. But like my doctor's office, when we check in, every fucking time we check in for a doctor's visit, there's a questionnaire attached to the kid's side of things. And it's like, are you eating 3 meals a day? Are you doing this or doing that? It's like, I'm answering the question. So if this is a way to try to track abuse, I'm going to lie to you anyway. But, at some point, it feels to me like that the state has put some obligation into pediatrics to have some at least checkbox process where they're doing some basic welfare checks on patients with their annual well visit or whatever, that they're reporting that somewhere. It seems like. I'm assuming. I can't imagine. I can't imagine that you would go through that voluntarily because it's a big long questionnaire.
I can see some reasoning behind it if and when there is any kind of investigation into it. If there are medical records of like, hey, for the past 4 years they've been 72 pounds and that's not how young kids grow.
Yeah, I mean, I can get behind the premise of obligating, as a doctor, you're obligated to report to somebody if it seems clear and obvious to you that this child is being abused.
Right.
I can get behind that. Like I get behind the premise of a doctor at an ER has to call the police if you come in after getting shot.
Right.
Like if somebody comes in with a gunshot wound, the cops are showing up.
Right.
Which does sometimes cause problems because people don't want to go to the hospital after getting shot because they don't want to deal with the cops. But tomato, potato, I guess, on that one. I don't know how else to... I get it.
I mean, yeah, they have the same issue with overdoses. A lot of people are reluctant to call the police with an overdose.
Because,
I'm going to get in trouble.
Well, because, because you're criminalizing the victim at some point.
Right.
Not to say that there isn't some free will choice, especially in the drug abuse side of it, but even in the, like you got stuck in some weird gangland bullshit and you got shot in the process. It's like, well, yeah, I don't want to die, but if I tell you who shot me, I'm going to die.
Yeah, definitely that fear as well.
So you kind of put me in, you put him in a spot where
we should encourage people just not to say nothing then.
I don't know. I mean, well, the question is how many people choose not to get the medical attention they need to survive because they don't want to deal with the consequences of what goes on around it.
How many people do that without that? Most people put off going to the doctor for whatever reason.
I would say it's a little different getting shot than it is having a sniffles.
I would say the opposite of ladder.
How tall is the ladder?
Huh? No, I said what's the opposite of ladder?
Former?
The former, yeah. I would say the former is much more prevalent as far as people
just don't go to the doctor because they don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to pay the bills.
Right.
They don't want to do all that stuff. Sure, absolutely.
Right.
But the difference in the life-threateningness and cost, I think, are the questions at play here.
Yeah.
Like, I think your likelihood of surviving a lot of gunshots is pretty good if you get to the hospital pretty quick.
Yeah.
You get shot in the face, you're done, whatever. But, a lot of you could survive a gunshot. They're pretty good at it nowadays. all these good old school like army doctors that have come back and brought some cool shit with them from war.
Yeah.
On how to keep people alive.
And that's why I mentioned to you, there was a cool podcast I was listening to that was talking about like kind of like gun death rates and whatnot. And one of the kind of caveats they threw in there was, our gun death rates going down because we have a much better expertise in treating gunshot wounds.
Because we send our kids all around the world to get shot by foreign people, and we've gotten really good at keeping them alive.
Outside of military.
Oh, because so many people shoot each other here, we've got a lot of practice too. Yeah, okay. I get it.
Right.
Yeah,
these are like ER doctors in like Chicago, LA, like major trauma centers.
Yeah, you deal with the more you deal with it, the better you get at it. It's just like anything else.
Well, I mean, just the science in general. They were saying just the science of like outside of like X-rays, but as far as like the imaging of what we have of trying to look under someone's skin to figure out where exactly the wound goes down
to. If I go in there and grab it, is it going to pull this thing out with it?
Right. It's not like, let's get a scalpel and open up and see what's going on inside. It's like, hey, we can put a dye into the bloodstream and see, where this dye is going. Like, okay, it's spreading here, so you have a leak there.
Right. You have a leak.
Yeah. To put it mildly, yes.
That reminds me, one of my favorite lines out of Brooklyn Nine-Nine is Jake, the main character, he's talking to somebody, he got hit by a car, and he goes, doctor says it's internal bleeding, and that's where the blood's supposed to be, right? So I'm good. It's like, yes, Jake, you're supposed to have your blood inside you. But...
inside your vein.
Yeah, so there's that. Mayor got some shit. Ryswick got his 18-month review. They delayed it because he came through in the halfway point of the year. 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, which is kind of weird. I would have liked to have had that review conversation with Jennifer had I known it existed, because I know she's one of the ones that is not high on Ryswick.
Really?
So, I mean, I don't know. I like Jennifer a lot. I've said it 1,000 times, but at least she is the school board's version of Amelia Parker. She is the anti-hero, if you will, of that body. She is the constant detraction from what's going on. Like, everybody else seems to get on board with certain items, and almost every time, if everybody's on board, Jennifer's like,
I mean, to an extent, that can be
helpful.
helpful.
I think it's great. I think every governing body should have at least one or two of those. It shouldn't be divided by party.
Right.
But
that depends on, like, I guess, how staunch they want to hold that line.
Right.
But, I mean, someone that at least wants to think outside the box and be like, hey, have we thought about this? Have we thought about that?
If it's a thoughtful detraction,
like, this sounds fucking awesome, but have you also thought about, what that's going to cause this to happen?
Right. If your reason is you said yes, so I'm saying no, that's not good.
Right.
But if it's okay, yeah, I see the points here. I see what you guys are talking about. But here's some research from this thing on the topic that kind of says, as much as the hope is that it's going to do X, the results generally are Y. And do we want the Y results? Do we want to pay for Y results? Because this is likely what's going to happen. That's the kind of stuff. And I think for the most part is of Jennifer stuff. Because, I still think the stupid language thing in the employee handbook is ridiculous, but like, she was thoughtful about her decision to change it. She never sent me that email, though. I need to call her back on that.
Oh, or I just forgot.
Yeah. She's been helping me with other stuff. She's been helping me navigate some local nonprofits and stuff to help out with a couple things that I'm working on. And apparently I'm becoming a philanthropist just for fun.
Sorry,
not with my own money. That's not the right. That's not
like a bad joke, but it's.
I'm not a philanthropist. It's I'm a freelance nonprofiter.
Oh.
Like I'm for no particular, for whatever fits my fancy. I want to help people in certain situations navigate some of the nonprofits and things that are available through the state or nonprofits to them. Basically, because I know this person and they had a shit roll the dice and it sucks. And I am doing the best I can with that person to help them use things that are available, to find and use things that are available to them to help them kind of reshuffle the board, if you will, with after their shit rolled the dice.
That's with a lot of services is some people just don't know that there are services out there to help them for certain things.
Yeah, there's a ton. I mean, that's these warming center things. Going back to our storm conversation.
Yeah,
we had 5 countywide that opened up for the week, for different parts of the week because of how cold it got. That's the first official effort by this new city county housing and homelessness, or I can't remember what the name of the group is or whatever, but it's the first official thing that they did, which is basically they have groups of churches and other nonprofits that have facilities that they built a cold weather plan. So when we get these crazy cold snaps that we get every once in a while, these different entities will open up their places for what they call warming centers, which is kind of weird. It's a place to not freeze to death.
All right. Yeah, I think I saw one a couple days ago that there were some churches that were scattered around the city.
Yeah, and county.
One in West Knoxville, one in South Knoxville.
I think Cokesbury out here in
Cokesbury
was in. That's a huge facility, and there's a lot of room.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a cool. I think that's one of the things, especially in the unhoused arena of conversation. I think that's one of the biggest potentials that we have is that we have a ton of nonprofits that want to do stuff. We have a ton of volunteers that want to do stuff, and we have a big population that need help.
All right.
It seems to me that it's poor management by the city and county of these different groups that are trying to help, because you have so many groups that are kind of overlapping each other that it really just what seems to happen a lot is you have just it's all
everybody's doing clothing drives.
It's all little handout
centers.
That's
great. It's we have a shit ton of clothing, but they need food.
Right. It's all handout centers. It seems to be all handout centers. There's either food or clothes.
Yeah.
And then some of them have a little peripheral thing, like Martha LaRue with the Care Cuts thing, which is a really cool thing that they do, where they get you get clean and a haircut. Get your nails done, but they actually get a shower. They have mobile showers that they set up for the people when they come in. They get clean. They have people there that will guard their shit. So, you're living on the street, everything you have is with you. Right. And so they have a little spot where you can put your stuff, go get a shower, get a haircut, and then they do a little bit of food, but then they have a lot of clothes and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But then,
it's about places like Carm, a lot of times that they've got, someone there that can kind of set you up with, not necessarily like a social worker, but someone that can kind of go over and what kind of services.
Right. But I think that's what we really
can we help
you
find a job? Can we help you find this?
I don't know if they can do it or not. I don't know if there's authority to say, we see you wanting to work this nonprofit in this angle, but we don't need that. We have too many of those already. We have too many food banks. Food is not the issue, which I think is the truth. Food is not the issue for our unhoused populations in Knoxville.
Yeah. That's more so for people that are housed and they're just struggling.
Right. And so trying to figure out how to manage these nonprofits that want to do food, because that's the big one. You feel good about that one. It's a really easy one. People like the volunteers and or the people who are donating, it's an easy straight line to feel like you've done a good thing in the process.
Like, I'm helping feed people.
Where really it might be a better overall good for the community at large if we did X instead of, okay, thank you, Mr. Whatever, for buying a pallet of noodles.
Right.
But we don't need noodles. What we need is the equivalent in dollars you spent on those noodles in...
Yeah, people live on the streets don't
in
have
a payment for, in...
They don't have a burner with a pot and water.
Whatever it is, and not even that, though. I'm just saying, skip the food part. We need to get these people a place to stay.
Right.
We need to pool the money that we're spending on food and buy an old apartment building and get it habitable and make it a medium to long-term housing unit instead of, or something like that. I don't know what the exact answer is, but I think that's what we have so many groups that want to, that I think if the city and county kind of helped navigate them into a more cohesive plan instead of it just being all these disparate individual nonprofits doing their thing, that it might have a better net effect. Because I think
I would sure there's dialogue to some extent with at least some of the agencies or some of those that help. Like I said, I don't know how much the city or the county is being like, hey, we think your model's not really.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how much of the authority they have to say, we see that your want here, but we don't see that that's going to be useful.
Sure, there's a little bit of dialogue with some of them, and like, hey, this is what we really need, but you can't really force
it's like, hey, how about instead of X, you help us fund some substance abuse programs,
right?
Because that's going to have a better net effect. Because we have food, we have this, we have that. but what we don't have is help with the substance abuse problem.
Right.
So help us fill this gap. And slowly over time, if we can get that all spread across the different needs, then all of a sudden we kind of have a full umbrella of programs that we can move people through to help them get back on their feet and move on.
I mean, the unhoused is a very complex kind of
It is.
problem in itself.
And, it is.
'Cause some of it is, just
Some of it's by choice. Some of it's a want. Like they do exist.
like there's a small fraction.
And then some of it is mental health that
Yeah.
they
You
think
have
it's
that.
a by choice. It is a by choice, but it's not a by stable choice.
Right. A lot of them just kind of get stuck in that, they lost their job, lost their apartment, or whatever, so end up out on the streets.
Right.
But then, they try to go apply for a job, and what address do you put down?
Right.
You can't.
And I have to.
Who's going to,
Right.
yeah.
And the IRS won't let you employ somebody who doesn't have a permanent address on file.
Right.
You can't send their W-2s to a PO box.
Right.
If they can even afford a PO box for that matter, but
Right.
you can't send their W-2s to their business address. Like I can't, like when you worked for me, I couldn't say his mailing address is the store so that it comes to me and I can give it to you.
Right.
Like by law, it has to be sent to the address you have. That cannot be mine. It cannot be a PO box.
Right.
And so it's like, well, all right, but my man's living in his car in my parking lot, and he's doing good work and he's trying to get his shit together, but I can't pay him legally.
Right.
He's
That's
allowed
what I'm
to
saying.
work.
Yeah, a lot of people just kind of get stuck in that level of if they
I
just
think
had
that's a
this,
weird-
if they just had this one thing,
Yeah.
they can get a lot more, but they can't get this one thing. They
That might be a good
they can't
nonprofit
get a
to set up.
job to get money to get a place to live because they don't have a place to live.
That'd be a good nonprofit to set up. Or here's a permanent mailing address service. That's all I do.
I remember seeing. I think it was a guy in Wisconsin that got a bunch of little tiny homes. I think they were actually just like little sheds, but basically had them as like kind of single occupant, like little dwellings. But he was able to get like an address, I guess, for each one of those, to where they could help the unhoused,
It
and
was-
they actually had an address that they could put down.
Yeah, depending on zoning, it would be 123 Main Street, apartment 1, 2, 3.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They wouldn't all. It wouldn't have to be 123, 124.
Yeah. They bought like 50 sheds. Put it in some property he had or whatever,
Yeah.
just to
That'd
give
be-
people like a place that they could put down as an address.
Yeah, and leave some of their shit.
Yeah, they could lock it up. They may not have a shower in that thing, but they had a bed and someplace that was enclosed.
Yeah.
It wasn't made out of cardboard.
Depending on where he was and what the city or county zoning laws are, and whether how many hoops he had to jump through to do that. Because I would bet there's nowhere in Knox County you could do that inside code.
Yeah, probably not.
And or you would have to like pitch it as an apartment or multi-use condo or a condo complex or something like that, which even though it's a bunch of sheds in a field, it's going to get taxed on a different rate that's going to be too expensive for you to do.
I really was on like a park or like a lot.
I know, but I'm still saying like
Right.
it would be a commercial residential instead of a true residential, which has a higher tax rate or has a higher property value, and then would make it a little bit too expensive for you to pay the taxes.
I'm not really sure how he had it set up. I thought it was at least an interesting concept.
No, again,
Sadly,
I
it was
was
at
just
the
trying
same
to bash
time.
the concept. I was
Right.
more trying to bash the government's likelihood of shutting that down if anybody else tried to do
Right.
it. But
But sadly, it was also at the same time when, people were like, tiny houses, blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
So then he was, shit like that for sheds and things and like that. Costs had gone up. But he saw it as a viable option.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, I can buy.
and I mean, yeah, and I think one of the big issues is that like the line for a lot of people is you've got to come in clean.
Yeah.
And that's, it's a chicken or the egg argument. It's like they're not going to get clean
Right.
if they're staying on the streets, but they're not going to have a place to stay if they don't get clean. And it's like, well, I'd rather stay fucked up and I'll just sleep underneath the bridge
Right.
or underneath the staircase behind our
Yeah.
place.
I can do this and pass out every night.
Right. Yeah. I got access to this. I can get fucked up enough that I'm going to pass out and it doesn't matter what happens to me.
Yeah.
I'm out cold and maybe really cold this week. Bad joke. I'm sorry. That was rude. What else got? What else did I miss? I feel like there was one other thing that I knew I wanted to talk about that I forgot.
I think I saw anything major locally.
Schools. Oh, the Haslam family thing. That was the other one. Yes, excellent.
Oh, they finally sold to Berkshire?
Yep, they're
Is that what you're
done.
talking about?
They're out of that. They quit. There's the Haslams
they back
are no
out of
longer
the-
in Pilot.
Did both of them drop their lawsuits against
I don't know.
one another?
I mean,
Did we talk about that?
I don't think I know about it. I don't know if we've talked about it on here.
Oh, okay. I
I'm
remember
aware
we
of
talked
it.
about
It
it.
was
on
one
here.
of those. It was just an accounting.
They're both like
game.
suing each other
Yeah.
for valuation of the company, basically.
Yeah, the Haslams have every incentive to say it's worth a ton of money because they're selling shares, and the more it's worth, the more their shares are worth.
Right.
Berkshire Hathaway, who is the buyer, has every want to evaluate it as low as they could possibly get away with. And
A lot of stories
Berkshire-
that I read that basically like Berkshire Hathaway had a lot more, I guess, like evidence of what they had found of like the Haslams trying to,
inflate whatever.
yeah, they were like encouraging others to do whatnot.
I mean, it's what you do. I mean, I would do it too if somebody came and was like, "Hey, I want to buy your business. How much you want for it?"
Apparently, there was bribes that were involved in it.
Well, and they're publicly traded, which changes the animal too. I mean, they're trading at least they're trading shares, whether it's public or private doesn't really matter.
Right.
It's not a true it's not like a normal. It's not like I could sell my business in a direct sense where we can just agree on a number.
Yeah, I thought that was more like evaluation of the company itself as to what it was worth when purchasing.
Right. And so because what they end up doing in those
Like
things
we agreed to buy it.
is in a contract. We'll buy it, assuming X, Y, and Z. You say you want X. Okay, we'll give you X, but we need proof that it is worth X, and this is the data that we would like to see to prove that. And so the contract, you put the contract in place saying that's what the lawsuit is that they were under contract saying Berkshire saying we'll buy it.
We'll buy it
if X, Y, and Z are in
at this
place.
at the current evaluation.
Right. And Haslams
then
are saying
a year
agreed
down
to
the
buy
road.
it. You agreed to buy it, now buy it. And Berkshire's like, well, you agreed to give us X, Y, and Z information. You haven't. And so it's a contract dispute.
I thought it was more just an evaluation of the company itself.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. The X, Y, and Z is like how you set the
Pilot was
evaluation.
trying to inflate it, and then Berkshire
Yeah.
Hathaway was trying to deflate it.
Right, because like you oversell, you do high estimates of projections in sales. You do low
I think
estimates.
that's what it was. Yeah, I think Pilot got accused of was allegedly, I guess, encouraging their people that put the numbers in or whatever, or
Right.
that evaluate it. Basically, like, hey, we'll give you this if you
Anything that's
crank
an
your
asset,
numbers up.
anything that's anything that's an asset, we want it to be as high as we could possibly get away with.
Right.
Anything that's a debt, we want to show those as low as possible. So, like, put all the assets in for 10% more than what we paid for them, or whatever it is. Put all the debts in for what that debt value is going to be at the end of this fiscal year, or after the date of signing, or whatever. Like, you just, it's not that you're lying about the debt value; you're just putting it at a date later, so that that debt's going to be paid down a little bit before it actually happens. And so, even though you sold it having more debt than you actually have. That kind of crap. That's just, whatever. It's dumb. Why couldn't, I don't understand why you wouldn't just be like, okay, I'm Berkshire Hathaway. We're the biggest whatever in the fucking planet. I will give you $1 billion for your company. And then the Haslams say yes or no. Or the inverse of the conversation is the Haslams like, hey, we're done with this thing. We're getting old. Cleveland Browns are winning football games for the first time ever. We're totally sidetracked.
They didn't make
with
the
this thing.
playoffs.
They made it, but they lost. So we've got these other ventures that we're more focused on. We want to sell you our company. Anybody want to pay us $1 billion for our company? And that's that. Like, I don't know why it's like it turns into these big complicated messes of, yeah, I'll give you that $1 billion if, and it's like, nah, you give me the $1 billion or you don't. I'm not signing a contract that says that to answer your ifs.
Well, when it comes down to it, when that final check get wrote, you're talking about a difference of probably tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly.
But that responsibility is on the two parties of the contract or of the exchange. Berkshire Hathaway should be like, okay, you're asking $1 billion, I'll give you $750 million for it. And the Haslam's like, that's not enough, man. Just like anybody else haggle, just like me and you,
Well,
will
I'm sure
haggle.
there were other people in the game.
Sure.
And that's where.
So that's why, but that's why I don't get it. It's like you do your research. It's like when I get the phone calls all the time. Hey, you interested in selling your house?
The market's volatile.
Everything's for sale, man.
Especially like petroleum.
Yeah, but somebody walks up to you and says, "I'll give you $1 million for your house," and it's a $300,000 house or whatever, like mine is. Write up the paperwork.
Right.
Show me the paperwork that says you're going to give me a check for $1 million, and you can have my keys.
Right.
Deuces. It's a simple exchange. Why wouldn't my business be the same way? It doesn't matter what it's worth. I don't care what it's worth.
But if all of a sudden, like right before, that contract was about to be fulfilled or whatever, or somebody said they're going to give you $1 million, all of a sudden your house was evaluated at $1.2 million. You're not going to try to be like, well, hold on. Like all of a sudden, like now I'm worth 1.2.
I mean, if I sign the contract, it's too late. If I said it's not too late.
It's going to depend on the contract.
Forget the contract. No, screw the contract. That's the problem with it is we have this contract. You give me a check for $1 million. I verify that check is good. They're your keys. I don't care what its value. It's no longer matters what it values for right now.
Well, no, you just had a verbal agreement like a month prior.
I mean, I don't know I don't know the.
Somebody was like, "Hey, I'll give you $1 million." I
don't know the legitimate.
Like, all right, man. Like, let's do that.
I don't know the legal strength of the verbal contract anymore and whether that exists.
I'm trying to. We cut out the contract. I don't know why you wanted to throw in now. That's now a verbal contract,
like a verbal agreement, whatever. It's like nothing matters until the money changes hands.
Right, nothing and that's matters. What I was trying to say. Like they had a semi agreement beforehand.
Right, but why would you set up this big complicated thing that takes time to fill the answers out? You should know the answers before you have the check written. Don't write the check until you know the answers. If they're not going to answer the questions for you, don't write them the check. Hey, man, I hear you telling me that you are projecting this kind of sales. I also hear you telling me that you have this much debt. I got a guy over here that's telling me that he's been looking at your stuff and the debt's a little higher than that and the projections are a little bit much. So your $1 billion is too many.
Sometimes it gets complicated in this crazy math equation we're looking at here. I think the original agreement was they're buying out and it's like a percentage of shares, basically. So then it gets down to, what is the company evaluated at? What are the shares at a given day?
It's a percent of a whole.
Well, when they made that decision, shares were at $200 a share or whatever.
So the example on that would be right now we go to Dow Jones or whatever.
Or they agreed like we're going to buy it on this date and we're going to. I don't know what all was in the agreement.
Right. Again, that's why it's complicated is because there's a complicated agreement in play. Like if I were to,
I don't know if someone was like, "Hey,"
if I were to go to a stock exchange, if I were to go to the New York Stock Exchange and walk down on the floor and say, "I'll give you $40 per share, and I'll buy 100 shares for whatever stock," it doesn't matter what it's valued at. I said I'd give you $40 for it. You take the $40 and go. Who cares if right now the market says it's only worth 32? Who cares if the market right now says it's worth 45? It's worth whatever I'll pay for it. And if you want the money that I'm handing you, then you give me that thing, whatever it is. It's not a shares or chicken sandwiches. It doesn't matter. It's just a regular exchange of cash for goods. That's my complaint with this whole thing is that it turned into a complicated exchange of cash for goods that turned into a lawsuit that cost millions of dollars for both parties. And the only people who win are the lawyers in the conversation. And that's what I guess bothers me about it. I thought about doing that. That'd be a fun game to open a law firm, not as a lawyer, just hire a couple of lawyers, and be their cashback. Pay them to be lawyers and get a percentage of their take on whatever the cases are. However you figure out however we're charging for cases. I'm sure there's people that do it that aren't lawyers that are the name on law firms. There's got to be some.
Yeah. No, but I don't know if part of that was, like, hey, we're going to buy it on January 1st.
Right. I feel like that's probably exactly
we're going to buy 15% of your company on January 1st. Whatever the stock market's at. So then leading up to it, Pilot was like, hey, let's fucking cook our books and, raise our prices per share.
That's what I'm saying, though. It just seems like a weird way to buy something. Like, I'm going to buy it knowing that it's going to change between the time I agree to buy it and actually buy it. I mean, that was the Elon Musk and the Twitter thing. It was the same deal. As soon as Elon made the official offer to buy Twitter, it became a game of him trying to figure out how to devalue Twitter stock.
So he could buy it for less.
So that he could buy it for less.
When the time finally came that he had to actually buy it.
Right. Which just seems dumb to me. Like, why either party why would you put yourself in that situation? No, because he ended up paying more than what I think he was initially anticipating. I think they were initially thinking it was going to be like $40 billion, and ended up paying like $46 billion. Because a lot of people went out, oh, well, Elon's buying. I mean, because realistically, it's going to get bought. I'm going to go buy as much as I can get my hands on right now. That's going to push the value up as other people are buying it because I know it's going to sell. Like, I mean, I would think that would be the standard flow of things. Maybe Elon was hoping there was enough time for that initial surge of people to buy, and then he could shit talk his way out of it, and it dropped down below what the original was. But even if you're speculating like that,
that's what mine and some people's thought was that he was trying to find a way to back out of agreeing to buy Twitter.
Well, I mean, I think he, just like this Berkshire Hathaway thing, he knew when he made the offer, or he thought he knew at least when he made the offer, that when they got into the books and started looking around and digging into it, that the Twitter's self-evaluation on what they were worth versus the reality was going to be less.
Yeah.
And so he knew, he thought that when that came out, because like one of his things when he was in the process is like, how many bots are on Twitter?
Right.
You know, because to him, to Twitter, to anybody in the sphere, the only thing that matters is how many real users you
You're
have.
saying you've got 1 billion users.
Right. But 500 million of those are bots. You only have 500 million users. Because
Right.
all you want are users, because users are who you get to show your ads to.
Right.
And so, yeah,
I don't
so
know.
I think that was his
Do
play.
companies still make money when you're selling ads to a bot?
Theoretically.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Twitter would, yeah. If
Because they're saying like,
because
hey,
they're selling by view, and if they could say we had 100 views on this thing,
right,
90 of them weren't real people.
or we pumped this ad out to,
right, but it got 90 clicks, and 80 of those clicks were bot clicks. But whatever, it got clicks. We're only selling you by the click.
Yeah,
That's certainly a possibility there.
Well, John Oliver did a interesting thing on Elon Musk. Unless you had something else you wanted to say. Was kind of talking about and kind of that weird dance that we have with private industry and the U.S. government, and that now you've got Elon Musk that owns 3 or 4 major corporations, basically. Some of which he's got the Starlink set up, which is coming to play in a lot of conflicts and whatnot. As far as like them basically being like one of the sole providers of like satellite internet access for our military, other militaries, etc.
Right.
And that being kind of like too reliant upon like this kind of public-private partnership or federal-private
It'd be public-private, yeah.
Yeah, this will be public-private. Federal government considered public?
Yeah, U.S. public dollars.
Okay.
That are using U.S. tax dollars to pay a private company to do a service for the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah.
Which gets into a number of other issues, argumentatively at least. But, I mean, it is a weird spot we find ourselves in.
And then providing like...
because on a whim...
Tesla batteries for, excess things.
Well, on a whim, Elon decides he doesn't want to provide Ukraine with Starlink service anymore, and the Ukrainian military is using that for all their communications and battlefield planning and all that kind of stuff. And now they have for whatever reason, he decides not to do it. It completely cripples the Ukrainian military.
Right.
And is that a thing that we should be okay with one person having the authority to be? Not really. But the question to me, I guess, the pushback question to me, I guess, on that is it Elon Musk's fault that Ukraine is dependent on him because there's no other option?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Ukraine made the choice to go into business with him for the thing. Now,
I don't know if necessarily went into business with him, or I don't know if they're paying it for it, or he offered it. I don't really know.
Right, and that's where it gets wonky, too, because he gets to get...
It's like, well, I offered it, I can rescind it.
He gets to involve himself in a lot of politics because he has the ability to give away services to foreign nations that then have influence over X, Y, or Z.
Right. So, yeah, you've got that access of private infrastructure, basically. Like, can't be provided outside of, governmental agencies or other, well-to-do industries that have the capabilities of putting a satellite up that can do this and that.
I mean, I think I don't know. I'm trying to think of a non-military concern I would have with that. Like the military one I get, but it's like at the same time it's military. You need to take to me, if you're in a national defense setup, if you're a military, whether it's Ukrainian or the U.S. or Israel for that matter, it doesn't really matter. If that's your job, that's what you do. It's your job to fill the holes. It's your job to figure out what you need to do your job effectively. and execute said needs. And if you're in a position where the only way you can functionally do your job is to have a full dependency on one company that has on the whims of one man, you're in a really bad spot.
Right.
That's not.
I think that's kind of what they were.
That's not really Elon's fault, though. That's just the world that the Ukrainian government lives in right now, and that sucks. Now, I would think it's totally fair if I wouldn't agree to it, but I would think it would be totally fair if the U.S. government wouldn't be like, hey, Elon, open it up, we'll pay you for it. Open it up to Ukraine, let them use it, and we'll pay you for it. Because that's a diplomatic thing that the U.S. is doing for a friend nation of Ukraine. But if Ukraine's like, look, I gave it to you guys for
but
free.
the U.S. government can't force Elon to do it if he said no.
True. It's true. Like if he just had some moral issue and he just hates Ukrainians.
Right.
Like, yeah. I mean, I think they could. I think there's war.
Well, that's kind of the weird thing.
Because
we kind of have this intermingling of it. I'm sure our military also uses his satellites as well.
Sure. The same. To me, it's the same thing, though. It's like, well, if you use them, great. But if you're fully dependent on you, that's a problem. You've built a weakness into your system.
Right.
If you have to have, because I simplify the example. It's like, well, can the U.S. government force you to do something? Like, would it be reasonable for the U.S. government to force you to send $20 bill to Ukraine or Israeli families right now?
Right.
Would that be a reasonable and fair thing to do? Would it be a nice thing to do? Sure, it'd be a nice thing for you to do as an individual.
A nice thing to require.
Do what?
A nice thing to require?
No. I'm saying, would it be a nice thing for you to do as an individual? Yes. But would it be appropriate for the United States government, even though they're kind of doing that indirectly right now anyway, but for the sake of the example, just saying, hey, you person, put a $20 bill in an envelope and send it to this person in Israel right now.
Yeah.
You're required to, or you're going to jail.
Well, sorry, I don't remember the exact example of what exactly it was, but I guess they made the point that at some point, someone in the government, or like a reporter, had reached out to someone in the government about a certain program that had to do with one of the companies that Elon Musk had owned, and they basically deferred to Elon. Like, I guess they were asking for like a decision or how they were going to do this or that, and they were like, you need to talk to Elon.
Again, I think that
it's like, no, like you're the federal government. I think it was something that the federal government was kind of leasing or using that had to do with Tesla, et cetera.
Again, it goes back to that same thing that I complain about all the time. It's how do you set up the incentives? How do you set up how is this relationship set up? Now, I don't know. I don't quite understand the specific of the example that you have. But if it's like, if the U.S. federal government has outsourced their satellite communications to a private company, Starlink being the example we're working with right now. If they decided to do that for whatever reason they decided to do that, and they're paying X, and the contract is this, then we are beholden to that contract. And if that contract gives Elon the ability to do X, Y, or Z, or doesn't stop him from doing X, Y, or Z, but we still owe him the money or whatever the combination of things are, right, that's our fault for getting into that position. It's not his fault for being the business guy. Now, is he a dick? Maybe. But the idea that the U.S. government could obligate him to do something that he didn't go into as a voluntary contract, like if it was a voluntary agreement, then sure, you agreed that you would do this for us. Now do it.
Right.
And if you don't, we're going to sue you and go through the legal process to do so.
I think it's more than, like you said, that it gets to the point where you are, I guess, like the weight of need, you become beholden to that person.
Yeah, and it's a problem. I mean, it's a real problem. I think it's one of the problems that we learned during the pandemic on how much we've outsourced so much production of so many things. It's like, yeah, it made sense. It worked at the time, but as soon as we had one little hitch in the program,
shit was cheap. And it's like, wait, all of a sudden when we can't get it, like, fuck, what do we do?
It's a big problem. And so like that, like on a national defense, on a national self-interest level, it's like that policy, that economic policy that was put into place in the 80s and 90s or whatever, left us extremely vulnerable to a situation.
Yeah. So it's like, wait, we don't make any face masks here in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Like, no, we just buy them all from China.
Right.
Like,
nobody thought nobody thought to maybe obligate some sort of secondary something in place, that we have some way to do something in case X, Y, or Z.
Well, we had a stockpile, but that stockpile is 15 years old at this point, and the papers,
all dry, rotten, trash.
Yeah.
But we've got 150 million of them. We can't use them, but we got them.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, though. That's just poor strategic planning.
Right.
It's the same thing on a smaller level that I've been going through this week with our staff and the weather situation.
I'm assuming some of that just kind of happened like progressively.
Sure.
Where it's like, oh, hey, we've got this new outlet that can help us with this and that, with tech, something we can outsource something to,
it's
and
lobbying and it's glad handing, and it's all the other stuff on the other side too, because Elon Musk and or anybody else in this game is
like, oh, you guys need this.
is
Well, I'll also
weaseling their
do
way in there,
this. Like,
man,
I can do this too.
I'm Boeing, man. I want a contract for a $30 billion plane, and I want $1 trillion to develop it.
There was a story today about Boeing.
I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get that. Like, I mean, again,
I'll go the federal government, holding Boeing accountable with the 747s or whatever that had the door that or a window or something.
Yeah, that's a different one, and that's the commercial section of Boeing.
But the story was also about how the kind of that government private
like
relationship.
Another front top headline example that just kind of happened and nobody stopped to think about it was with Amazon Web Services for cloud services for, I think it's the CIA, the IRS, and the ATF.
Yeah, I heard there was a big to-do years ago for that contract because they were
because
another big company.
Microsoft was fighting for it, and Cisco Systems, I think, was also in the bidding process for it.
Yeah, probably.
But there was a big thing on the tail end of it is that when that contract finally got signed off, it was a Biden deal. Biden signed off on it, and everybody was like, "Hold on a second, you promised us during your campaign that you would not offer federal contracts to any company found busting unions. You swore to us. You promised that." And this is right in the middle of all that shit in New York with Amazon warehouses trying to unionize. Now, it may have been a timing thing that Biden didn't really have a choice. The contract was already signed per se, but it was just the official ceremonial bullshit. And
this started 2 years ago.
This has already been in the works.
We can't stop this train.
Not dissimilar to the ambulance contract thing we had here. There's no turning back on it now. We've got to go with it. And that might have been the case,
right?
But it certainly wasn't explained to us publicly that was what was going on,
right?
But what it looks like is that Amazon is busting unions and getting giant contracts with the federal government.
They've been busting unions for a while.
Sure,
right, yeah.
But we were promised that wasn't the case. We were promised that as president, I'm not going to give a federal dollar to any company who's caught union busting.
I don't know if Amazon's been found guilty of union busting.
I mean, I don't know if that's an official crime in and of its own merits. I mean, I think
that's what some people want to play on is the actual have they been found guilty of it?
I know, right? The
accusation is better. It's different.
The Labor Relations Board hasn't done any direct action against Amazon for their.
We're saying what they do is kind of unethical, but it's not actually crossing the line of union busting.
They
or
did
whatever.
one where it was you had to get in line to get a form, to get in another line to sign for getting the form. And it was this whole big complicated thing that Amazon was making people do.
Right.
If you want to go vote in this union vote,
right,
it's anonymous. But the management team is going to give you these forms, and you have to sign that you got the form from them, and this, that, and the other. Now, we're not going to see what you voted per se.
What you go on that extra break for?
Right.
I had to.
Shouldn't you be in your truck pissing in a bottle right now?
Right.
The fuck you doing in here playing with paperwork?
Right.
So, yeah, that's that. Last call, friend.
I don't have my story out. Oh,
man. You knew it was coming.
You want a UFO?
Hell yeah.
I don't know how soon it was coming. E.T. welcome. Kentucky City beams message into space inviting extraterrestrial and visitors. Kentucky City has come up with an out-of-this-world campaign to promote tourism. Lexington Convention and Visitors Bureau used an infrared laser beam to beam a message into space to invite extraterrestrial travelers.
Remember a couple weeks ago we were talking about we're curious how the Lexington government and the University of Kentucky line up. I'm going to guess they're not particularly in the same field of logic. I'm guessing that the University of Kentucky's astrophysics program was not part of that decision-making process.
Hopefully not. You heard about the, guess what we would call the T-dot signs or whatever. I guess the federal government has put out a rule that you can't have humorous messaging.
What?
Yeah.
Joy kills.
They're discouraging. I think it doesn't go into effect until 2026.
Whatever.
But it's been in the news a little bit. I mean, some of them are funny. I bet I can see to some extent that it can be kind of distracting. Especially like you're staring at it, trying to figure out like what that play on words is supposed to be.
It's too witty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could see that being.
That's the argument for some of them.
Well, I mean, the point, like, what's. Yeah.
But there's also studies that say that people that
see
saw some of those signs,
and
they
you're
actually
remember it.
they thought about it. Well, they thought about it more and actually
Right.
like, oh, click it or not necessarily click it or ticket, but something a little bit more better than that.
But right, one that's a joke. That's a joke.
So I hadn't really thought about it, but that is something that should be more careful about.
Booze it and lose it.
Yeah,
we do like our rhyming schemes here.
Yeah,
but
just so catchy.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. I mean, I remember booze it and lose it, and
I mean, some of them are just like it needs to be like informative. Like we don't need to have like this.
Yeah,
flashing Las Vegas style like billboards and shit up there. It needs to be like straight and to the point. Like people only have like 5 or 10 seconds to like read this shit and put their eyes back on the road.
Yeah. It's bored guy in the office trying to figure out a way to make his day fun.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can kind of see both sides of it.
Yeah, one more.
Oh. Stuntman steering a car with his feet loses control, injuring 9 people in northern Italy.
Isn't that the point?
What?
The point is the danger. That's why you do a stuntman. Like, now, usually it's the danger of the person in the car, not necessarily the danger of the spectator.
I'm not sure if he was a professional stuntman or not.
The Italians, too, are one of those that are kind of crazy anyway.
Hold on, it gets worse. A stuntman steering a car with his feet while sitting on its roof lost control and struck a barrier during an exhibition in the northern Italian city of Verona. Okay, so I guess he was professional stunt
We're here
driver.
to watch the show, and the reason the show's exciting is because the guy's sitting on the roof driving with his feet.
Right, knows what the fuck he's doing.
No, it's not whether he knows it's not like it's the anticipation.
Well, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to do this.
It's the anticipation of the possibility of carnage. That's why we like that kind of stuff.
No.
You don't think that's why we like to see Travis Pastrana take a Subaru off of jump? Travis Pastrana? Is that his name? Say his name? He's a motocross guy. He does a bunch of he's a Red Bull, one of those Red Bull stuntmen, and he does these big elaborate stunts. And he'll jump a car over.
I don't think we watch it for the possible carnage of it. I think we watch it to see something like crazy like that of like.
Right, but it's crazy like that because the danger, the possibility of failure. That's why Evel Knievel existed. That's why we like stunt people. That's why we like bullfighters.
It's because they're doing something dangerous. We want to see them be able to complete it. Or at least most people want to see them be able to get it done.
I think you're wrong.
I think you're wrong.
I think you're absolutely wrong. I think people are very torn between wanting to see it completed and wanting to see an absolute failure. Now, I would agree that people watching don't want to be part of the failure and get hit by said car with a guy driving on the roof with his feet. I agree that I
don't want to view us as that fucking malicious.
Huh?
I don't want to view us as that fucking malicious.
I don't think it's malicious. I think that is a deep primal part of the human condition. There's something about.
I would disagree with you on that right there. I think part of the primal condition is to see someone else be able to do something and not see someone else fail and die at it. I don't think it's a primal urge to like.
Again,
watch someone go try to kill a lion.
Let me try to clarify my statement real quick because I think you misheard me. I think it's the possibility of failure that makes the possibility of failure is what makes the stunt so exciting. The idea that I can see this guy die right now or complete an amazing thing.
Right.
It's not that we want to see the death per se, but I think we're good either way. I think seeing the failure is as exciting and exhilarating as seeing the success. It's a different type of
equal.
I think they are equal parts in why we watch them.
People would be happy either way.
I think people would be.
Hey, you were able to jump it, or hey, you just died. Hey, that's
people
cool.
would be shocked and appalled, but I think they would go to it. They'd go to see one again. I think that's why we watch it, because of the danger, because of the possibility for catastrophic failure.
Right, we watch it for the danger, but I don't think it. I don't know. I got the impression that you're like, we're watching it because we know there's a chance they could die, and that's why we want to watch it.
Yes. The possibility of catastrophic failure is why we watch it. Because if there's not a possibility of catastrophic failure, then the success means nothing. Like, you know, like when you see a little kid, like just like 3 or 4-year-old walking down the street, and he jumps over a puddle. He jumps over the puddle, not in the puddle, but jumps over the puddle, and they're so proud of themselves, and you're sitting there watching, like, that's cute, it's adorable. Because that was an exciting adventure for that thing. But to you, it's not that big a deal anymore. But when you see, you know, when you do it as an adult, that moment of exhilaration, like, I'm jumping over this thing, and if I fail, I'm going to fall in the water. I'm not going to die, but it's going to be embarrassing, and it's going to suck, and I don't get to show off my cool skills, and the girl won't love me anymore, whatever it is. Like, that's part of the risk is part of the reason.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, again, I'm not saying that anybody, there's certainly some psychopaths out there that want to watch somebody die, but watching somebody succeed is not fun if there's not risk of seeing them die. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Like, it's not exciting if there's no real danger to it.
Right. I can see that. Sorry, I guess I misunderstood.
Pastrana did he was the one that did the half pipe in the car that went up on top of something in Vegas, like landed on top of a thing, or it did on his motorcycle rather. He went up like a half pipe up on like the Vegas version of the Arch de Triomphe or whatever, like 40, 50 feet up in the air, like jumped on top of that thing and then like dead dropped back down the half pipe on it. Did another one in a car. He's done all sorts of crazy stunts. Look him up. It's fun. It's crazy stuff. Like, the guy's ridiculous.
Okay.
Like, they know the Nitro Circus stuff. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
That's his company.
Okay.
So those are all his stunt team that goes and tours his stuff, and he does some of those and doesn't do some of it. Like, he's a whole motocross guy. Like, he started as like the crazy motocross bike racer and got into other stuff. But now he's like the chief stuntman for Red Bull Stunt Sports or whatever.
Okay.
That is pretty crazy though, with his feet.
Outside of the car.
Yeah. That's the other one, like what's it in the Middle East?
I guess it's just like 9 people got injured.
It's like that's the other one. Like you see it like this is one that's actually like an urban thing here in the United States, where dudes will be doing donuts. Like, they'll get together in a bunch of their cars, and they'll go do donuts at the intersection, and the big crowd of people stands around. And you see the videos of people getting hit. Like, you're not standing there watching these cars do donuts that close to them without enjoying the risk of it. Yeah, that was a weird example. Not the best.
No, people expect that if you're doing that kind of shit, you think there's a level of expectation that you know what the fuck you're doing before you start getting out there and just trying to like do burnouts and donuts and shit.
I've seen people get waxed on those things pretty bad.
Right, and that's
their shoes go flying off. It's always the shoes that's the most shocking part when somebody gets hit by a car. Is the shoe? The one shoe always flies crazy. It's never both shoes. It's just one shoe goes.
Just don't tie their shoes.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it is. But all right, so when we see you all again, it's going to be 65 and sunny. We're going to be in shorts and t-shirts. Maybe go bare chested for an episode. What do you think?
Nah.
Topless Friday? No, I don't know. All right, that's almost here, everybody. We did a show. We did a thing. We talked to people. Well, we talked to each other. But I did talk to Bexley Massey. We are full on election cycle. New session is in play. Oh, they took the week off. They were supposed to work this week, and they didn't go to Nashville because of the weather. Not that this week one's never a busy week, but we'll see how that plays out, because usually in an election year they try to end session quicker so that they can get out of session and get to the real job of fundraising. So Almost Agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, the website almostagreement.com. Check out what we got going on there. Go to your favorite podcast provider, give us a follow, a 5-star review, text it to your friends. Apparently that's the best way to get podcasts to other people, is just share it through a text message and then tell them to follow from there. And then it automatically goes in their Facebook feed. Yeah, we got more stuff. We're going to do more shows. I'm going to start doing more interviews. Like I said, we got lots and lots of candidates going on. And we'll go from there. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.